Chapter 742. As soon as the doors to Jiucheng Palace were kicked open, Han Yunxi felt a gust of cold air rush towards her. It was bone-chilling. Only the heavens knew how many years it had been since this palace had been opened to sunlight. When she and Long Fei walked in, Han Yunxi purposely closed the doors and locked them from the inside. The large palace was empty and pitch black. Only the faint light of a lamp could be seen in front of them. Elder Kinzo and Duanmu Yao should be there. The further they went, the colder it became. She couldn't imagine how Elder Kinzo had managed to survive by locking himself in here when he had a relapse. A detestable person must have a pitiful side, and a pitiful person must also have a detestable side. Han Yunxi had never seen Elder Kinzo's condition when he had a relapse. She had never imagined that such a handsome and dignified old man would end up in such a sorry state. Even though she hated him from the bottom of her heart, Han Yunxi couldn't help but feel her heart clench. The tall and proud sword sect elder, the high and mighty sword sect elder, the supreme master of the martial arts world, the grand master of a generation, was actually curled up into a ball, in such a sorry state that he looked like a dog on its last legs. He was crouched in a corner with his hands hugging his knees. He was clearly in his 60s, but he looked like a lost child who didn't know what to do. His gaze was empty and unfocused. He was muttering to himself, but it was hard to hear what he was saying. Duanmu Yao was lying nearby, still unconscious. Han Yunxi was stunned. Long Fei didn't move, his face expressionless. After a long time, Han Yunxi finally muttered, Was he always like this? Han Yunxi recalled what Long Fei had told her. Elder Kinzo's silver hair had turned white overnight because his teacher's wife had passed away. Only the word love could torment someone like this. If the heavens had feelings, they would also age. For a long time, Long Fei did not answer her, as if he did not hear her. Is he always like this when he has an attack? Han Yunxi asked again, but Long Fei did not answer. Han Yunxi turned to look at him and saw him looking down. He did not look at the old man in Kinzo. Was it because she was too upset that she didn't want to see it? In the end, he was still his master. In the end, he was still a master who was as loyal as a father. In these years, only he could understand the heavy burden of the East Qin imperial family. It wasn't like this before. This time it hurt the most, right? Long Fei finally spoke up. Suddenly, the Kinzo elder looked up. His eyes were bloodshot and his expression was crazed. He looked at Han Yunxi and Long Fei, then at Duanmu Yao. I couldn't save her. I couldn't save her. I deserve to die. It's all my fault. I couldn't save her. As he spoke, tears began to roll down his cheeks. Let's go. Long Fei turned away, refusing to look at anything. Han Yunxi was still in a daze. She knew that the sheet Qinshin was referring to wasn't Duanmu Yao, but Long Fei's master's wife. Let's go. Long Fei pulled Han Yunxi away. He didn't want to see it, but he didn't seem to want Han Yunxi to see it either. Did this count as protecting the old man in Kinzo's last shred of dignity? Han Yunxi knew that Long Fei still felt pity for his master despite his rage. Wasn't she the same? No matter how much she hated him or how unwilling she was, she had to admit that Li Qinshin had killed her out of Long Fei's consideration. If word got out that she was a descendant of the poison sect, Long Fei would be in big trouble. Han Yunxi was about to leave when Kinzo suddenly struck out with his palm. A formless, colorless energy flowed out of his palm and into Duanmu Yao's dantian. This is... Han Yunxi couldn't ignore it. Internal energy. Long Fei immediately rushed over and grabbed Kinzo's hand. You've really gone mad. This energy was none other than Kinzo's internal energy. The true qi that Granny you had given Han Yunxi could be slowly recovered through cultivation, but if it was internal energy, then it was gone forever. True qi was used to protect the body, while internal energy was the foundation of martial arts. Kinzo's martial arts skills were so high, and his internal energy was so strong that he was willing to waste it on Duanmu Yao. He really was crazy. Let go. Kinzo slapped Long Fei's hand away like a madman. I have to save her. I have to. Anyone who gets in my way will die. She's Duanmu Yao, not Luo Qingling. Long Fei roared. Unfortunately, Kinzo didn't stop there. He sent a vicious palm strike at Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi could only back away and draw his sword. Time was of the essence, and the ranking matches were tomorrow. He'd come here to negotiate terms with Kenshin, not to see him give up on himself. Han Yunxi watched anxiously. She didn't want Long Fei Yi to fight Kinzo again, and she didn't want Long Fei Yi to waste his precious energy on something so meaningless. Seeing that the master and disciple were about to fight, Han Yunxi quickly pulled Long Fei Yi's hand away. Kinzo's sword came slashing down, right next to Han Yunxi. It was a close call. Long Fei Yi was shocked, and Han Yunxi broke out in cold sweat. Li Kenshin, Luo Qingling is dead. Dead? Han Yunxi roared. Luo Qingling died because of you. Why can't you face the truth? Kinzo was stunned. He looked at Han Yunxi, and his eyes gradually darkened. Be careful. Long Fei Yi wanted to pull Han Yunxi away, but Han Yunxi didn't dodge. She boldly met Kinzo's eyes and asked, You've been suffering from relapses for so many years. Do you think Luo Qingling will forgive you by punishing yourself like this? Let me tell you, she will never forgive you. Li Kenshin, you're a hypocrite and a coward. You betrayed Luo Qingling just to protect your laughable dignity, reputation, and righteousness? She must have been waiting for you to give her a status, but she'll never get it. She's already dead. Even in death, she can only call you master. Li Kenshin, I finally know why you want me dead. Haha, even Luo Qingling has to follow your so-called moral code. Right and wrong, let alone others. Li Kenshin, if you can't afford to love her, why do you still love her? Why do you still want to hurt her? Li Kenshin, you can't save her life. You can't even save her heart. You can't give her anything. Li Kenshin, you can only go crazy. You can only admit her identity and miss her when you're crazy. Go crazy. Haha, it's just an excuse to make you forget the righteousness of Tianshan Mountain and your relationship as master and disciple. Li Kenshin, it's been so many years. Why don't you want to recover from your illness? By the end, Han Yunxi was choking with sobs. Luo Qingling's already gone. She's gone far, far away. Even if you throw everything aside now and give her the status she deserves, she'll never know. Why did people only know what was precious when they lost something? Kinzo had already put down his long sword. His eyes were no longer cloudy, but tears were flowing down. He fell to the ground, exuding infinite sadness. Every one of Han Yunxi's words stabbed into the deepest, softest parts of his heart, hitting him right where it hurt. Han Yunxi knew she was being cruel, but she had to be cruel to the end. Reality was always crueler than the human heart. She flipped the unconscious Duanmu, Yao, over and removed her mask to reveal her old, ugly face. Li Kenshin looked clearly. This person isn't Luo Qingling. No matter how similar her talents are, it's not her. Letting a woman like Duanmu Yao practice the Xian swordplay is an insult to Luo Qingling. Li Kenshin didn't look at Duanmu Yao. Actually, he knew everything. All these years, he had doted on and spoiled Duanmu Yao in hopes that someone could master the Xian swordplay. Thus, he only cared about Duanmu Yao's dantian after her injuries. He didn't ask about her ruined face. Silence reigned in the empty hall. Li Kenshin hung his head like a statue. Let's go, Han Yunxi said. Tomorrow, I'll fight Song Qiuzi in the ranking matches, Long Fei Yi said before leaving with Han Yunxi. At the door, Long Fei Yi said, Han Yunxi, Han Yunxi waited for him to finish. But Long Fei Yi only stroked her bangs and smiled back without a word. What about me? Han Yunxi pressed. I'll take a look at your internal injuries. Let's go. Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunxi's words had been lingering in his mind. Since you can't afford to love, why do you love? Why do you hurt? The seventh-floor palace was Long Fei Yi's residence at the peak of Celestial Mountain. Its layout was similar to his quarters at the Duke of Qin's estate. As soon as they entered, Han Yunxi felt as if she'd returned to the Duke of Qin's estate. Only then did she remember something. Long Fei Yi, the estate sent a letter before saying that Su Xiaoyu's gone missing. She must have been kidnapped. Don't worry, Chu Shifeng will take care of it. Long Fei Ye's eyes flickered with a complicated look as he took Han Yunxi's hand to take her pulse. Han Yunxi wanted to ask more questions, but Han Yunxi stopped her with a look. Han Yunxi could only calm down and let him take her pulse. After confirming that Han Yunxi's internal injuries weren't serious, Long Fei Yi finally relaxed. He abruptly reached a hand below Han Yunxi's stomach and gently touched it. Han Yunxi couldn't help but tense up. That place was too sensitive. Long Fei's hand was very warm as it rested on her stomach. It felt indescribably comfortable, and she could faintly feel a warm current flowing from her stomach to spread throughout her body. She was clearly very tired and weak, but now she felt refreshed, as if she'd been reborn. Gradually, she forgot about Long Fei Ye's hand and felt her entire body grow lighter. Thank goodness Granny Yu's true chi was protecting me, Long Fei Yi sighed, still feeling a lingering fear. I really shouldn't have brought you here. Han Yunxi grew agitated. Don't even think of chasing me away. Long Fei Yi laughed. I bet all of Cloud Realm Continent knows about your origins by now. Han Yunxi hadn't realized this at all. Celestial Mountain was difficult to ascend, but news of the poison sect spread like wildfire. Long Fei Yi grew serious. We can only win tomorrow's ranking matches. We can't lose. Everyone in the world knew about Han Yunxi's origins, so they would know about the changes at Celestial Mountain as well. Only by taking control of Celestial Mountain and Cloud Realm Continent's martial arts circles could he contend against Medical City. Otherwise, he'd become a target for everyone as soon as he took Han Yunxi down the mountain. As they spoke, there was a knock on the door. Who was it? Chapter 743. Someone knocked on the door, but Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi seemed to know who it was and tacitly ignored it. Long Fei Yi asked faintly, "How's the poison beast?" Even though he didn't see how the poison beast protected Han Yunxi, he heard the commotion and knew that if it wasn't for the poison beast, Han Yunxi would have died under the swords of that group of people. At the mention of Lil Thing, Han Yunxi's heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Once her poison storage space was restored, she put Lil Thing into the poison pool to recuperate. She put almost all of the expensive poisons in the poison storage space into the pool to increase its toxicity, hoping to help Lil Thing a little more. Even though she didn't take the poison beast's blood this time, Lil Thing was beaten back to its original form right after it was restored, so it must have been severely injured. It's recuperating in the poison storage space, still unconscious, Han Yunxi said solemnly. Long Fei Yi was silent, not saying a word. You're not allowed to throw it around again, Han Yunxi said seriously. Ever since he lost the bet, Long Fei Yi hadn't thrown Lil Thing around again. He lowered his head, a little embarrassed. I haven't thrown it around in a long time. Then you're not allowed to bully it, look down on it, dislike it, be fierce to it. Han Yunxi glared at Long Fei Yi, very serious. Long Fei Yi avoided her eyes. Seeing his attitude, Han Yunxi was angry. What did this guy mean? Did he dare to dislike Lil Thing? Han Yunxi was about to explode in anger, but Long Fei Yi said, I will treat it well. Long Fei Yi said it awkwardly, but if he could say such words, it was enough to show that he really would treat Lil Thing well. That's more like it. Han Yunxi was finally satisfied. Han Yunxi hadn't realized how big of a benefit she had given the little thing. Long Fei Yi had said these words twice. The first time, he had said it to Han Yunxi in his heart. This prince will treat her well. The second time, he had said it to Lil Thing. It was a pity that the little thing was unconscious. Otherwise, it would definitely be jumping around in excitement. After all, it could understand human language now. The knocking on the door finally stopped as a low, hoarse voice spoke up. Fei, let's talk about tomorrow's ranking matches. The person who came was none other than Kinzo's old man, Kenshin. Long Fei Yi glanced at Han Yunxi and finally went to open the door. If Kenshin Li did not come, Han Yunxi's words would have been in vain. When he opened the door, he saw Kenshin still in a sorry state. He must have come here immediately after leaving the Ninefold Palace. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant, no longer looking like his former self. Fortunately, his eyes were still clear and sharp. This meant that he was sober, very sober. Han Yunxi stood behind Long Fei Yi and studied the old man. Although she had seen him with her own eyes, it was hard to imagine him in such a helpless state. Kinzo purposely avoided Han Yunqi's gaze, so Long Fei Yi invited him inside to talk. Han Yunqi had no idea how dangerous tomorrow's matches would be, but Qin Li was well aware. After 3 days and 3 nights of fierce fighting, they were finally able to sit down together. They were both smart people and didn't need to talk about reconciliation. Both of them understood the severity of the situation. Just how confident are you in tomorrow's matches? Kinzo Li got straight to the point. If Long Fei Yi hadn't come out of closed-door cultivation early, he wouldn't have asked this question. If Long Fei Yi had full control over the lust bite energy, then dealing with Song Xiuzi would be a piece of cake. But Long Fei Yi had come out of closed-door cultivation early and fought for 3 days and 3 nights. Kinzo Li had no idea what Long Fei Yi was up to. All he knew was that Long Fei Yi wasn't certain of victory. 1 night's rest should be enough, Long Fei Yi said mildly. Kinzo Li knitted his brows in disbelief. He was about to ask when Long Fei Yi shot him a look. It was obvious that Long Fei Yi didn't want Han Yunqi to know the truth. Only then did the sword sect master remember that Long Fei had concealed the lust bite energy from him. Let me take a look at your pulse, he said. Long Fei Yi reached out without hesitation. Kinzo Li's face turned green as soon as he felt his pulse. Even Han Yunqi could tell that something was amiss. What's going on? Han Yunqi asked anxiously. It's nothing serious, Long Fei Yi replied immediately. Han Yunqi was much more clear-headed than before. When she saw the wounds on Long Fei's back, she'd cried herself silly. Now that she thought about it carefully, how could she still believe Long Fei's nonsense of no major injuries? He was only trying to comfort her. Han Yunqi glared at him, her gaze enough to kill. Liar! I'll never believe you again. Long Fei Yi's heart skipped a beat as he felt an indescribable sense of dread. He looked at Han Yunqi's furious expression and couldn't find an explanation. Han Yunqi didn't notice his strange behavior, but asked Kinzo Li, just what's going on? Is it serious? What will happen if we fight Song Xiuzi again? Han Yunqi thought that they wouldn't fight unless they were 100% certain. After all, one was responsible for one's own life and death in the ranking matches. Once Song Xiuzi's weakness was exposed, they'd have 9 chances of survival. Seeing Kinzo Li remain silent, Han Yunqi got straight to the point. Li Kenshin, you raised this wolf Song Xiuzi yourself, so you'll deal with him yourself. Long Fei Yi isn't playing anymore. Although the sect leader couldn't participate in the ranking matches, he could deal with Song Xiuzi tonight. Was Duanmu Yao's exposure of Song Xiuzi's crimes still insufficient to convict him of his crimes? All that talk about not wanting internal strife, not liking bloodshed between factions, and not wanting to attract heretical sword sect members were just excuses. Why should Long Fei Yi risk his life to maintain peace on Celestial Mountain? It wasn't like Li Kenshin didn't have the strength to deal with Song Xiuzi. Whatever should be messed up should be messed up. Long Fei's heart finally returned to normal at the sight of Han Yunqi's worried and indignant expression. He smiled dotingly, but didn't say a word. Kinzo Li was actually smiling as well. His silver hair was disheveled and his face was mottled with tears, but his smile was amiable and amiable. He said, it doesn't matter whether Celestial Mountain is in chaos or not now. Lass, rumors must be spreading all over Celestial Mountain. Celestial Mountain can fall into chaos. An old man can kill Song Xiuzi right now. But Fei needs to win tomorrow's ranking matches. He needs Kinzo's position as sect leader and the strength of the martial arts circles. Otherwise, it'll be hard for him to face off against Medical City or Protect You. Han Yunqi calmed down and understood. No matter what, Long Fei Yi had to win this match. How's the situation? Long Fei Yi finally spoke up. I'll help you tonight. Don't worry, Kinzo Li said seriously. He finally stopped avoiding Han Yunqi's gaze and looked at her seriously. Lass, you're right. Old man raised a wolf, so old man has to deal with him personally. Just what was Kinzo Li planning? And what about Long Fei Yi's situation? Han Yunqi still didn't understand. She wanted to ask Long Fei Yi, but she was afraid that Long Fei Yi wouldn't tell her the truth. She could only wait for Kinzo Li to arrive tonight. Not long after Kenzo Li left, Han Yunxi and the rest received news that Duanmu Yao had been thrown into the Celestial Prison by Kenzo Li. The Celestial Prison was Tianshan, Kenzo's highest-level prison cell. It was a true prison cell right below Celestial Sword's main hall. Each cell was surrounded by 4 dead walls and a hollow iron mesh at the top. Anyone locked inside would be forever trampled underfoot, never to rise again. He's finally awake, Long Fei Yi intoned. After all these years, he'd always felt that his master wasn't ill, but drunk. Han Yunxi had dug up his old wounds, but the pain had awakened him instead. Before nightfall, Su Donglin arrived with 2 letters from South Ning Prefecture. The situation was dire. News of Han Yunxi's poison sect disciple spread throughout Cloud Realm Continent. Medical City was the first to make things difficult for Medicine City, demanding that they stop all dealings with Pill Fiend Pharmacy. At the same time, they restricted the medical community's activities in South Ning's Commander-in-Chief's estate. As soon as the rumors spread, Gu Beiwei was the first to voice his suspicions and demand proof. Han Yunxi was far away at Celestial Mountain, so only its disciples had seen the poison beast. Medical City couldn't produce any proof right away, which was why Medicine City didn't give them a formal answer. The medical community hadn't completely retreated either. However, South Ning's Commander-in-Chief's estate was already divided into 2 factions. One faction insisted on believing in Long Fei Yi and that Han Yunxi wasn't the poison sect disciple, so they demanded proof. Another faction wanted Long Fei Yi to give Long Fei Yi to Medical City to atone for his crimes. The war between the 3 nations was still ongoing. Ning Cheng stood on Medical City's side and accused Long Fei Yi of colluding with the poison sect. Tian and Western Zhou didn't make their stance known, but simply watched from the sidelines. That wasn't even the worst news. The worst news was that Ning Cheng had transferred over a large batch of red coat cannons from somewhere to defend the Eastern Front against the Mu family troops. He was going to personally lead the Ning clan troops into a fierce battle with the Chu clan troops. Western Zhou's imperial prince had staked everything on a single throw and placed all of his troops on the battlefield in Fenglin Prefecture. Long Fei Ye's expression was grave. It was obvious that Ning Cheng's move was completely unexpected. He guessed that Cloud Realm Trade Consortium had more red coat cannons in their hands, and that Ning Cheng was keeping them to defend against Northern Li. Otherwise, Ning Cheng's prudence would never allow him to leave the Northern Front open and the Chu clan troops on the Eastern and Western fronts. Just what had made Ning Cheng so impulsive. Why was he staking everything on a single throw? It had to be said that the situation was grim. There were sudden changes in the war between the 3 nations and internal strife in the south-central regions. No one knew how long Gu Beiwei could hold out. Once Medical City punished the south-central regions, Ning Cheng wouldn't even need to kick them while they were down. The south-central regions would crumble on their own. Han Yunxi's face turned ashen at the sight. She always knew that Medical City was powerful, but she never expected the medical industry to replace the banks, grain, and military industries and hold the government hostage. Once there were no doctors, the people would panic and the country would fall into chaos. Even if she was a descendant of the poison sect and had done all sorts of evil deeds, the medical academy couldn't threaten Long Fei Yi with withdrawing their medical services. They were treating the lives of the common people as a joke. Treating and saving lives and researching medical skills were secondary to the medical academy. To those people, medical skills were a sharp weapon that could eliminate dissidents. Han Yunxi hadn't been curious about the poison sect's past or the grudges between them and the medical academy, but now she was curious. I really shouldn't have come to Celestial Mountain. Han Yunxi began to blame herself. Chapter 744. Han Yunxi blamed herself deeply. If she hadn't gone to Celestial Mountain, none of this would have happened. Now that she thought about it, Elder Kenzo and Granny, you weren't so hateful after all. Her worries were entirely justified. Long Fei Yi stared at Han Yunxi for a long time before saying, whether you like it or not, you can't throw it away. You have to accept it. It's just a matter of time. Han Yunxi knew as well. She couldn't carry the poison sect's secret forever. Could she? How cowardly would that be? Her only hope now lay in the ranking matches. Has there been any movement in Northern Li in the past month? Long Fei asked. Su Donglin hastily replied. General Ouyang's side found out something, but we haven't gotten any concrete information yet. Speak? Long Fei asked. Jun Xie, the crown prince, and the second imperial prince went to Wintercrow country north of the Snowy Mountains. General Bailey suspects that they went there to buy horses, Su Donglin reported in a low voice. It looks like the Northern Dynasty's emperors are in a hurry, Han Yinshi commented. They've always been in a hurry. Long Fei mused. If Jun Xie bought horses from Wintercrow country, the cavalry and horses would get used to each other during the return journey. If they were fast enough, they would be able to put them to use around the start of winter. If they were on the safe side and waited until winter, Northern Li would still be able to reap the benefits of the war. Once Northern Li enters the fray, Han Yinshi said thoughtfully, then wouldn't they be able to keep Ningcheng in check? Originally, Western Zhou and Tian were attacking Ningcheng from both sides. Both sides were evenly matched in strength, so Long Fei you could just sit back and reap the benefits. However, Ningcheng had given up on the northern defense line and used a large number of red coat cannons against Tianning, while he personally went to the western front to fight Chu Tianning. In this way, Ningcheng's chances of winning were very high. This was because Tianning's Mu family troops weren't that strong. Although the Mu family troops were brave and skilled in battle, and General Mu and Mu Qingwu were true military talents, Long Tianma's support was limited in terms of weapons and provisions. In addition, the Mu family had risked everything to support Long Tianma during the civil war in Tianning. They'd used up a lot of their military strength, so even if they kept recruiting new soldiers, they'd never regain their former glory. No matter what, General Mu was no match for Ningcheng's redcoat cannons. Once General Mu was defeated, Ningcheng would definitely deploy the redcoat cannons to the western front to deal with the Chu clan army. This way, Ningcheng would win on both fronts. And given Ningcheng's temperament, once he agreed with Western Zhou and Tian'an, he would definitely use the medical academy to punish the commander-in-chief's manor in Zhongnan, and then immediately send his troops down south. Exactly. Han Yinshi's words were exactly what Long Fei was thinking. As long as Northern Li can pin down Ningcheng, it'll buy us at least 2 months to deal with Medical City's sanctions. Currently, Medical City couldn't produce any evidence to punish the commander-in-chief's manor in Zhongnan. Medicine City could hold out for a while, but so could Gu Beiwei and Bailey Yuanlong. Thus, Long Fei had to finish his business on Celestial Mountain as soon as possible and rush back to the commander-in-chief's manor to prepare for Medical City's full sanctions. Nothing could compare to Heaven's plans. What was lost at the swings, it was gained at the roundabouts. Long Fei immediately wrote a letter himself and had Su Donglin send it by Flying Hawk to Gu Beiwei. He told him to do his best to stabilize the situation and deal with Medical City until Northern Li sent their troops. Although it was all bad news, it wasn't enough to force them into a corner. Han Yunshi silently exhaled in relief. That's right, Your Highness. Su Xiaoyu disappeared without a trace. We haven't found any clues yet, Su Donglin said anxiously. Han Yunshi had long told Long Fei about this. I know, Long Fei intoned. Tell Chu Shifeng to contact Chu Tiannin's side and search for her together. They kidnapped her, but didn't come to extort her. What's the secret behind this? Han Yunshi asked. Perhaps it's an old grudge. Or perhaps it's not the right time for extortion yet. Long Fei didn't seem to take the matter to heart. Just wait, he intoned. After Su Donglin left, the room grew quiet. It was currently afternoon, the quietest time of the day on Celestial Mountain. Han Yunshi leaned against the window and looked down at the quiet scene below. Her heart was filled with emotion. She knew that Celestial Mountain's calm had long been replaced by turbulent waves. Song Chiozi had to be making his own preparations right now. The heretical sword sect was itching to make a move, but so were the scripture and sword depositories. Granny Yu would be a great help to them, but her vitality had been greatly damaged. It'd take her at least a year or so to recover. The branch factions at the foot of the mountain were probably observing the situation as well. Most of them supported Long Fei Yi in the past, but now that her identity as a poisoned sect member had been exposed, how many of them would stand by Long Fei Yi's side? Old Man Kinzo had only imprisoned Duanmu Yao. Song Qiuzi's evil deeds and Duanmu Yao's identity as a poisoned sect member had yet to be dealt with. Although none of the Celestial Mountain disciples dared to bring it up or ask, they would all be waiting. Han Yunxi mused that Old Man Kinzo would only deal with these two matters after tomorrow's ranking matches. Too many things were involved in tomorrow's matches. While Han Yunxi was lost in thought, Long Fei Yi had already silently walked up behind her and hugged her gently. He rested his chin on her shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I was thinking." Before Han Yunxi could answer, Long Fei Yi muffled her mouth. "Don't think about anything. It's rare for you to have a free afternoon, so keep your lordship company." Han Yunxi smiled. "I've been keeping you company the entire time. Don't think or say anything. Just stay by my side, all right?" Long Fei Yi's soft voice was filled with exhaustion. Han Yunxi knew he was tired. Actually, she was exhausted as well. Hearing him say that only made her even more tired. It had been too long since she'd emptied her head and let go of all her distractions to rest. "All right." She was just about to turn around when Long Fei Yi suddenly picked her up and strode towards the bed. Han Yunxi lay on her back while Long Fei Yi lay beside her, his back injured. The two of them held hands and closed their eyes in tacit understanding. They didn't say anything. Some companionship had nothing to do with lust or romance. There was no need for hugs or words. As long as they quietly stayed by each other's side, that would be the most lasting companionship. They lay like this for the entire afternoon. It was unknown if Long Fei Yi or Han Yunxi would fall asleep first. Long Fei Yi had never been this relaxed or slept this soundly ever since he'd found out about his past. This afternoon, he forgot about his injuries, forgot about all the hardships he'd suffered as a child, forgot about East Qin, his stepmother, imperial father, Tang Zijin, and Aunt Ru. He also forgot about the 7 noble families, Western Qin's imperial family, the poison sect, and the medical academy. As for Han Yunxi, this was her first time letting herself go like this ever since she'd transmigrated. Although the afternoon wasn't long, she felt like she'd slept for an entire century. She'd had a very, very long dream where the modern world and Cloud Realm continent intertwined. Her familiar places and people were all thrown into chaos. Gradually, she fell into a trance. In her trance, there seemed to be 2 forces pulling at her. She looked to the right and saw Long Fei Yi's face clearly. To the left, it was a blur. "Who is it? Who are you?" she muttered in her dream. That person didn't respond. Instead, he yanked her over. "Long Fei Yi." She looked back and saw Long Fei Yi staring at her, expressionless and silent. He didn't chase after her, but kept backing away until his figure was swallowed up by the darkness behind him. "Long Fei Yi." Han Yunxi suddenly sat up in fright, breaking out in cold sweat. Long Fei Yi was sitting by her side, holding her hand. "Did you have a nightmare?" Han Yunxi looked down and saw Long Fei Yi holding her hand tightly. She exhaled in relief. "So it was you. What is it?" Long Fei Yi didn't understand. "I dreamed that someone wanted to pull me away, but I couldn't see his face clearly. So it was you." Han Yunxi smiled, thinking that she must be too tired to dream so easily. "Who else would dare to pull you away besides your lordship?" Long Fei Yi grinned back. "Did you sleep enough?" Han Yunxi asked. Long Fei Yi really had slept enough. He'd never slept so comfortably before, so he was fully rested. "It's good that you've slept enough. Come over. Come over." The old man's voice suddenly drifted over. Han Yunxi noticed that the old man was already sitting at a nearby tea table. There were no longer any traces of him being in a sorry state. His silver hair that had gone white that night was neatly combed. He exuded a dignified aura. "How are Long Fei Yi's injuries?" she asked seriously. He came out of seclusion early and forcefully suppressed his internal injuries. He's already very lucky to be able to hold on until now. His chances of winning tomorrow's battle aren't high. Even if he wins, he'll still be seriously injured. At best, he'll suffer from cultivation deviation. At worst, his blood will flow in the opposite direction and he'll die, said the old man cold. Han Yinshi was shocked and glared fiercely at Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi didn't deny it. Then what do we do? Han Yunshi immediately rushed over to the old man Kinzo. Her grudges with him had long been forgotten. The old man Kinzo couldn't help but laugh. Lass, do you still trust the old man? I don't. Do we have any other choice? Right now we're all in the same boat. Song Xiuzi and Duanmu Yao did those shady things. You're the sect leader of Celestial Mountain and Duanmu Yao's master. So you bear the greatest responsibility. Moreover, Long Fei Yi is your disciple too. Long Fei Yi colluded with me, a descendant of the poison sect. You're also responsible for not disciplining him properly. Right now, the world isn't just cursing Song Xiuzi and Duanmu Yao. It's not just me either. You're the sect leader of Celestial Mountain, the alliance head of the martial arts circles. Han Yinshi grew agitated as she spoke. She paused to take a sip of tea before continuing. You don't have to worry about Long Fei Yi. You can go kill Song Xiuzi right now, but so what? Will the world accept you as sect leader if you continue to hold the position? You'll lose your position as Celestial Mountain's leader within 3 years. Han Yunshi spoke of the crux of the issue that Qin and Long Fei Yi hadn't brought up. Between them, it wasn't just a matter of helping or forgiving each other. They were all in the same boat, bound together for good or ill. Long Fei Yi's lips quirked up into a smile. The old man Kinzo laughed out loud. Lass, it's a good thing you're a woman. Fei has one less formidable opponent. Han Yunshi didn't want to discuss gender equality with the old man Kinzo. She asked urgently, Are you going to help Long Fei Yi? The old man Kinzo glanced at Long Fei Yi before asking, I've been in closed-door cultivation with him all night. Do you still trust the old man? But Han Yunshi actually said. Chapter 745. But Han Yunshi actually said, I trust you, not Long Fei Yi. When she finished, she gave Long Fei Yi a meaningful look. Long Fei Yi had lied to her about his injuries, so how could she trust him again? Long Fei seemed to want to explain himself, but in the end he only smiled and said nothing. Actually, he had long told his master not to tell anyone about the lust bite energy. Even if this girl stared at them, she'd still be fooled. Kinzo didn't expect Han Yunshi to say such a thing. His heart ached at the sight of his disciple's speechless expression. Fei had really given a lot of thought to this girl. Fei, let's begin, Kinzo intoned. What are you planning to do? Long Fei Yi asked. Although neither of them spoke about the lust bite energy, they both knew what it was. Long Fei Yi hadn't fully grasped the lust bite energy because he'd come out of closed-door cultivation early. He'd forced the last strand of energy into his body to control it, but because of this, his internal injuries were severe. Actually, he'd fought Kinzo for 3 days and 3 nights. If he'd let his guard down for even a moment, he would have lost to Kinzo's sword. If he could control the last strand of lust bite energy, then his strength would be equal to Kinzo's. Right now, the strand of energy was still running amok in his body. Especially since he'd just taken a nap, it was more active than ever. His internal injuries made it impossible for him to draw out the energy, much less control it. Thus, he could only rely on external forces, such as old Kinzo's. Using old Kinzo's energy to heal his internal injuries, he could then try to draw out the last strand of lust bite energy and regain control of it. Old man will use his internal energy to heal you, Kinzo said. Long Fei Yi nodded and did not say anything. Kinzo can only use his chi to heal him. The old man and Kinzo arranged for people to guard the door. The master and disciple did not enter the secret room. Instead, they sat down on the bamboo couch. Han Yunshi watched them from the side. Girl, you can only watch. Don't make a sound. Do you understand? The Kinzo old man warned. Otherwise, you will kill him. Han Yunshi nodded vigorously. I understand. Fei, you must remember not to get distracted, Kinzo warned. Long Fei Yi only responded faintly. I'd better go. I'll wait outside the door. Han Yunshi was afraid. If she stood here, she would more or less affect Long Fei Yi. Just stand here. I'll be more at ease with you here. Long Fei Yi smiled. Kinzo Old Man had already started circulating his internal energy. Han Yunshi didn't dare to say anything and quickly retreated behind Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi quickly calmed down as well, but he soon sensed that something was wrong. Kinzo Old Man wasn't using his chi to save him, but internal energy. He was shocked and turned around to look. At that moment, the sword sect master pressed down on his shoulders with both palms, and a thick and powerful wave of inner energy instantly poured into his body through his shoulders. Master, Long Fei Yi blurted out, not realizing he'd said master. Ever since he came out of closed-door cultivation, he'd never called Kinzo Old Man master again. Don't get distracted. Kinzo Old Man's voice boomed like a bell. Long Fei Yi knew the consequences of being distracted. Even if he didn't want to, he could only turn around and bear the pain in silence. Master wasn't using his chi to heal him, but his internal energy. Master had lost his internal energy to Duanmu Yao before, but Long Fei Yi had stopped him. True chi could be recovered, but internal energy was extremely difficult to recover. Especially at Master's age and physical condition, it was practically impossible. To heal his internal injuries, both true chi and internal energy would have to pay a huge price. Just how much internal energy was Master going to give him? Long Fei Yi wasn't sure. Perhaps Kinzo Old Man wasn't sure either. After all, this was the first time either of them had suffered internal injuries from the backlash of the lust bite energy. Wave after wave of pure and vigorous internal energy flowed into Long Fei's body. He could clearly feel the changes in his injuries, as well as the last strand of lust bite energy in his body. Gradually it calmed down. Long Fei Yi had no choice but to focus and convert the internal energy that Kinzo Old Man had given him into his own. Only by converting it into his own could he truly heal his internal injuries. Time passed little by little. Kinzo Old Man's energy continued to pour into his body. Han Yunshi watched from behind, her heart hanging in the air. However, she didn't know the truth. She didn't know the danger. She also didn't know that Kinzo was giving his all. Kinzo Old Man was willing to pass on his internal energy to Duanmu Yao when he was ill. Now that he was sober, he was willing to pass on his internal energy to Long Fei Yi. This was enough to prove how much he loved his disciple, Long Fei Yi. There was only silence in the huge palace. In the darkness, the weak light from the lanterns shone on Long Fei Yi and Kinzo Old Man's faces. Their faces were covered in fine beads of sweat. What seemed like a peaceful recovery was in fact a turbulent storm. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi jerked his head back to look at Kinzo Old Man. His face was ashen and his eyes were wide with shock. Han Yunshi was shocked. She hurried forward, wanting to ask what was going on. However, she held herself back for fear of disturbing them. Long Fei Yi was shocked because Kinzo Old Man had transferred all of his level 5 internal energy into his body. Level 5 internal energy was equivalent to half of his cultivation. He was a level 8 expert. After losing 5 levels, he was only a level 3 swordsman. He might not even be able to defeat an ordinary disciple from a branch faction. Even if he wasn't completely crippled, it was no different from being crippled for an expert like him. How could Long Fei Yi not be shocked? How could he accept this? Master was using everything he had to help him succeed. Fei, concentrate your spirit and chi. Kinzo Old Man said word by word, his voice loud and clear. Long Fei Yi was very familiar with this voice. When he was young, Master would always say these words to him whenever he practiced internal energy. In a daze, Long Fei Yi seemed to have returned to his childhood. Kinzo Old Man was a strict teacher, but also a loving father. Every time he finished his cultivation, he would stop being so strict and personally cook a table of food. He would drink wine while Long Fei Yi would drink tea. In the middle of the summer night, Master and disciple would drink to their heart's content under the starry sky. Long Fei Yi's only childhood memories were the midsummer nights on Celestial Mountain. Sensing that Long Fei Yi was lost in thought, Kinzo Old Man roared, "Fei, you've never disappointed your master before. I won't allow it this time either." Long Fei Yi's heart ached, but he quickly collected his thoughts and concentrated on his cultivation. A full fifth level of internal energy would take a lot of effort to absorb and turn it into his own. Deep in the night, the moon was still. Han Yunxi watched everything carefully, as still as the mountains and moon. When the eastern sky brightened, Kinzo Old Man finally withdrew his hand. He almost fell to the side, but managed to catch himself with his hands. His mission was complete, but Long Fei Yi was still going. Once Long Fei Yi recovered from his internal injuries, he had to draw out the last bit of lustbite energy and absorb it back into his body to control it. Kinzo Old Man pressed himself against the bed and struggled to get up. Although he was dressed in tidy clothes, he still looked like he was in a sorry state. He had gone from being a supreme 8th rank expert to a 3rd rank expert. How pathetic was that? His face was as white as paper, and he couldn't even stand straight. It took him a while to support himself before he walked towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi didn't dare to make a sound. She just watched. When Kinzo Old Man came closer, she wanted to help him up. Who knew that at this moment, Long Fei Yi's body suddenly erupted with a powerful force. Although it was invisible, Han Yunxi, who didn't know martial arts, could still feel the murderous aura and hostility from that force. Her intuition told her that this force wasn't anything good. Did Kinzo Old Man give Long Fei Yi that force? Or did Long Fei Yi have it from the beginning? She was full of curiosity, but she didn't dare to ask. She continued to walk towards Kinzo Old Man. But Long Fei Yi suddenly pulled out a long whip from his waist and lashed it at the air. Han Yunxi immediately froze. She remembered the injury on his back. Could it be that he still wants to? She was shocked. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Kinzo Old Man's sharp eyes. She opened her mouth, but in the end, she didn't shout. Just like that, she watched Long Fei Yi raise his long whip above his head and swing it in a circle. The tip of the whip fiercely hit his back. Blood spurted out and splattered everywhere. This last lustbite force was far stronger than any of the previous ones. It was hard to control. Although it was only one whip, the force of the whip was far more powerful than any of the previous ones. Han Yunxi smelled the smell of blood slowly spreading in the air. She covered her mouth and held back her tears. She tried not to think about what Long Fei Yi had experienced in the past month. She always knew that this man didn't have it easy, but she didn't know that it was this difficult. He stood in the darkness with a whip in his hand. His tall figure looked especially lonely. It was as if he was standing alone in the vast world. He was right in front of her, but far away. There was a kind of loneliness called distance. It was so far away that no one could approach it. Han Yunxi's heart ached. She couldn't express it. She secretly told herself that she had to treat this man well. She had to do her best to love and protect him. Long Fei Yi stood like that. Han Yunxi and the Kinzo Old Man didn't move. Han Yunxi stared at Long Fei Yi, while the Kinzo Old Man had his back to Long Fei Yi. He lowered his eyes and waited. Finally, when the sun climbed up the mountain and lit up half of the Tianshan Mountains, Long Fei Yi slowly turned around. His handsome face was stained with blood, but his smile was very beautiful. He smiled at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi immediately smiled. Seeing Han Yunxi smile, the Kinzo Old Man let out a long breath and smiled. Long Fei Yi walked towards them step by step. However, when he was 3 steps away, he suddenly stopped. "Master!" he cried out in surprise, using ventriloquism. The Kinzo Old Man was shocked. He turned around and saw that Long Fei Yi was fine. What happened to him? What's going on? The Kinzo Old Man asked in ventriloquism. The lustbite power is going against the flow, Long Fei Yi said seriously. When he controlled the last bit of lustbite energy, the lustbite energy in his body was complete. He could clearly feel that this energy had become more vigorous and powerful because it was complete. He thought that he had control over it, but this energy suddenly went against his control. The Kinzo Old Man was shocked. He had never encountered such a situation. Could it be that he had gone berserk? At this moment, an attendant's voice came from outside the door. "Master, Olertsong sent someone to rush you." In front of the Sky Sword Hall, the ranking battles battlefield had already been set up. Chapter 746. Long Fei Yi was clearly in control of the lust bite energy. But how long has it been? Why is the energy flowing in the opposite direction in his body? What's going on? Not to mention how powerful the lust bite energy is. Even if it's a low-grade internal energy, it's very dangerous for it to flow in the opposite direction. Whether it's Long Fei Yi or Kinzo, their understanding of the lust bite energy is limited. They don't understand why it's like this. Long Fei Yi stood motionless. Although he didn't show anything on his face, Han Yunxi could feel that the atmosphere between him and Kinzo was very tense. His heart, which had finally calmed down, was once again thumping wildly without stopping. Seeing that the ranking tournament is about to start, Long Fei Yi can't let anything happen to him. If he misses the ranking tournament, everything will be over. Suddenly, Kinzo stepped forward and pressed his hands on Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi seemed to know what Kinzo wanted to do. He wanted to block Kinzo's hands, but Kinzo had already used all his third-stage internal energy and poured it into Long Fei Yi's body. This third-stage internal energy merged with the fifth-stage internal energy that was originally passed to Long Fei Yi, forming a powerful and complete eighth-stage nirvana energy that forcefully suppressed the lust bite energy. Kinzo let go of his hands and immediately retreated a few steps. He fell to the ground and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. He had used up all his life's knowledge and his internal energy. Only Kinzo's eighth-stage nirvana energy can contend with the lust bite energy. Long Fei Yi looked at his master and resolutely sat cross-legged on the ground. He borrowed the strength of his nirvana energy to forcefully suppress the lust bite energy. After a while, the reverse flow disappeared, and he could finally control the lust bite energy. As soon as Long Fei Yi recovered, he walked towards Kinzo. "Master, you, Fei, these two powers are only evenly matched in your body for now. They're restricting each other for your own use, but there must be a reason for the lust bite energy to go in the opposite direction," Kinzo said through ventriloquism. Long Fei Yi knew that he was only temporarily controlling the energy. No one knew when it would go awry again. He grew heavy. "Master, your internal energy..." That last Yunxi is right. The old man's name is the old man. Why does he still have his martial arts skills? It's better to cripple them all. Become an ordinary person. The sword sect master chuckled. He had long since seen through his gains and losses. If he's a normal person, then perhaps Luo Qingling Shi's. Han Yunxi listened from the sidelines and realized that Kinzo had used up all his internal energy to help Long Fei Yi. She didn't say a word, but silently handed over a bottle of medicinal pills. Kinzo's old man saw this and smiled. "Lass, you don't blame old man anymore." Han Yunxi lowered her head and stuffed the medicinal pills into Kinzo's hands without a word. Actually, she had long stopped blaming him. She circled around Long Fei Yi's back and silently treated his wounds. "Master, Elder Tsong is already on the stage. I heard that second elder and third elder aren't participating," the guard outside reported. Tianshan Kinzo's ranking matches didn't have any prerequisites. In fact, you didn't even need to sign up. All you had to do was jump onto the stage. News of Long Fei Yi and Song Xiuzi's duel had long spread like wildfire. If second elder and third elder weren't participating, it meant that these two factions were still watching from the sidelines. They didn't fully support Song Xiuzi. If they supported Song Xiuzi, they could take part in the ranking matches and waste Long Fei Yi's energy to save Song Xiuzi some energy. Granny Yu's vitality had been greatly damaged, so she wouldn't participate. In that case, this year's ranking matches would really be a one-on-one duel between Long Fei Yi and Song Xiuzi. Although there were no prerequisites for such a high-level competition, only the elders were allowed to participate. In a sense, the ranking battle was actually a ranking battle for the four great elders. "Fei, hurry and go," Kinzo urged. "Are you all right?" Long Fei Yi was still worried. Old man still has to watch the matches, so how could anything be wrong? "Hurry and go." Long Fei Yi was the only one who understood Kinzo's words. The lust bite energy was unstable, so Long Fei Yi had to kill Song Xiuzi while he could still control it. Otherwise, if he couldn't control it, all his efforts from last night would be in vain. Long Fei Yi looked towards Han Yunxi and prepared to speak, but Kinzo cut him off. Don't worry. She's with old man, so no one will dare to hurt her. Besides Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, no one else knew about this yet. Naturally, he could protect Han Yunxi well. Although he'd lost all of his internal energy, he still had his status. Seeing Han Yunxi nod, Long Fei Yi didn't delay and prepared to leave. Han Yunxi called him back before fetching a clean outer robe and personally draping it over his shoulders. Don't worry. Long Fei Yi brushed aside her bangs and gave her a light kiss. Han Yunxi didn't waste words. I'll wait for you. After Long Fei Yi left, Kinzo chuckled and said, Lass, old man thought Long Fei Yi would never care about any woman in his lifetime. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Han Yunxi muttered inwardly. Actually, I used to wonder which woman he'd be so gentle with. Thinking back to how cautious she'd been in the past, compared to how tender he was now, Han Yunxi couldn't believe that Long Fei Yi had become her man. Lass, if you treat him sincerely, he won't treat you unfairly in the future. Actually, Kinzo wanted to say that as long as Han Yunxi stayed by Long Fei Yi's side until the end, she'd be the Empress of East Qin for sure. Kinzo thought. Long Fei Yi even hid the lust-bite energy from Han Yunxi, so he probably hasn't told Han Yunxi about the East Qin Imperial clan either. After all, it wasn't the right time yet. The future is too far away. I only want his present, every present. Every present is the future for the past a lifetime. Han Yunxi's voice was very low, as if she was speaking to herself. Kinzo didn't hear her and smiled. Let's go. Old man will take you to a good place. You're very happy about losing all your internal energy? Han Yunxi asked doubtfully. Kinzo had been smiling the entire time. Of course I'm happy. Kinzo sighed with emotion. All these years, my martial arts suppressed old man so much that he couldn't even breathe. Now I'm free. Han Yunxi knew that Kinzo wasn't talking about internal energy, but fame, status, and status. Fame, status, and status all meant responsibility. These things were propped up by strength. Without strength, these things would naturally fall off on their own. She helped him to his feet. Let's go. Kinzo brought Han Yunxi to one of the viewing platforms at the peak of Celestial Mountain. It was a large stone that jutted out horizontally. From its end, one could clearly see the battle platform in front of Celestial Mountain's Great Hall. Currently, Long Fei Yi had just landed on the platform to face Songqiuzi. The crowd was already in an uproar. Anyone who could watch the battle on the fifth peak was well aware of the current situation. Everyone knew that the battle between Long Fei Yi and Songqiuzi would decide the future of Celestial Mountain. Meanwhile, the spectators who couldn't make it to Mount Fivefold had heard the news as well. All of them were waiting at the foot of the mountain, waiting for the results of the duel while preparing to accept the outcome. Would they support Songqiuzi or Long Fei? The battle had shaken the entire mountain range. Everyone in Kinzo was paying close attention to it. Songqiuzi was dressed in green robes that fluttered in the wind. His long black hair and beard danced in the wind as he stood on the right side of the platform with his Xianqing sword in hand. He looked lofty, calm, quiet, and solemn as if he were a great scholar. Unfortunately, everyone present knew of his dirty deeds. The more he pretended, the more they found him to be sanctimonious, hypocritical, and disgusting. Wretched, Han Yunxi gave him this evaluation. He's seen Fei's skills before, but he still dares to accept the challenge. I'm afraid he came prepared, the old man in Kinzo said. Long Fei Yi's already recovered. Do you think he doesn't have a chance of winning? Han Yunxi asked. In theory, he should have a chance of winning. In fact, it's very likely. The old man in Kinzo stroked his beard, a trace of worry in his eyes. What do you mean by in theory? Han Yunxi was puzzled. The old man in Kinzo thought it over before he explained. It's easy for accidents to happen in a martial arts competition. The level of one's martial arts, endurance, stamina, and mental fortitude all affect the outcome. That's why all predictions are based on theory. Han Yunxi didn't understand, but she felt that the old man in Kinzo's words made a lot of sense. If there's an accident, it's Songqiuzi's fault. Han Yunxi still trusted Long Fei Yi. The old man in Kinzo smiled and didn't say anything more. Actually, his words were just to brush off Han Yunxi. This girl was smart, but she knew nothing about martial arts. She was especially stupid. In a battle between experts, all that mattered was martial arts skills. Endurance, stamina, and mental fortitude could be ignored because both sides were stronger in those areas. The old man in Kinzo was worried about how long Fei Ye's lust-bite energy would last. This point was completely uncontrollable, and it was precisely because this uncontrollable point directly determined the outcome of the battle. Therefore, the outcome of the battle was also uncertain. The old man in Kinzo knew that Long Fei Yi knew that the safest option was to end the battle quickly. But just how fast could his sword be? Long Fei stood on the left side of the stage, his tall and refined form loftily standing alone. His black robes were still stained with blood, his cloak and hair fluttering in the wind as they fluttered in the air with a swish. His jade face was as cold as frost, while his starry eyes were as deep as the sea. He looked coldly at Song Qiuzi as his lips curved into a contemptuous smirk. No matter where he stood, this man could look down on the world with disdain. Song Qiuzi's eyes stung at Long Fei Ye's mocking words. He raised his sword and pointed at him. Long Fei Yi, in the ranking matches, no matter your status, seniority, or martial arts skills, anyone who stands on this stage is responsible for their own life and death. Martial uncle, you've already made things clear. The taciturn Long Fei Yi simply pointed his sword at Song Qiuzi, his face as cold as ice. Long Fei Yi, on account of your status as the sect leader's disciple, the old man will give you a chance, Song Qiuzi said. As he spoke, his sword lightly scratched the ground by his feet as he laughed coldly. Admit defeat and get off the stage. Then the old man will spare your life. Chapter 747. Song Qiuzi's words made the crowd suck in a cold breath. If Long Fei Yi could fight Kinzo for 3 days and 3 nights, that meant he had the strength to match the Kinzo. Where did Song Qiuzi get the confidence to be so arrogant? For a moment, everyone was even more unable to guess who would win and who would lose in this duel. Song Qiuzi hid in the crowd with her hands over her mouth. She wanted to cry, but couldn't. She had no idea who to support. She hated her father's illicit affair with Duanmu Yao to the core, as well as Long Fei Ye's heartlessness. Years ago, her father had hinted to Long Fei Yi that as long as he agreed to her marriage, he'd support him to the position of sect head. But Long Fei Yi didn't even acknowledge her. Because she loved him, she hated him. Because she hated him, she still loved him. Song Qiuzi didn't want her father to lose, nor did she want Long Fei Yi to lose. Whoever lost would die. Her hands clenched into fists over her mouth, filled with nothing but anxiety. Nearby, second and third elder were exchanging glances. Finally, second elder spoke up. Old third, once Long Fei Yi dies, Song Qiuzi will definitely rebel. We have to make preparations. And if Song Qiuzi loses? While third elder was still hesitating, second elder laughed coldly. Song Qiuzi is astute. His internal energy might have long reached advanced 7th level. Long Fei Yi and the sect head fought for 3 days and 3 nights. I'm guessing the sect head went easy on him. Just wait and see. Long Fei Yi is no match for Song Qiuzi. But third elder was still hesitant. In the end, Song Qiuzi couldn't beat the sect head. Moreover, his reputation has been ruined. If we join forces with him, won't we? Long Fei Yi colluded with the poison sect's remnants. How will the martial arts circles accept him? Moreover, the sect head's 2 disciples have been embroiled in scandals. He's long lost face. Second elder said disdainfully. Third elder, Jianghu has always been about strength. The things that people know now are just rumors. The sect leader had only locked up Duanmu Yao without dealing with Song Qiuzi or Han Yunxi. From what I've heard, the commander-in-chief's manor in Medicine City still refused to recognize Han Yunxi as a poison sect descendant. Can't you tell? Today, whoever lost would be the scapegoat for everything. Whoever wins will be fine. The third elder muttered to himself as he looked at the tense situation on the stage. Let's wait a little longer. We have to observe the situation. Granny Yu was sitting near the two of them, her gaze never leaving Long Fei Yi. Last night, she had hesitated for a long time before deciding not to go to the peak, but she hadn't slept at all because she was worried about Fei's early exit. In addition to them, the disciples of the two pavilions and two halls were also speculating and discussing the outcome of the battle. Long Fei Yi, are you going to scram or not? Song Qiuzi laughed out loud, clearly provoking him. Long Fei Yi's eyes narrowed into icy slits. Song Qiuzi, even if you scram off the stage, your lordship won't leave your corpse intact. Old man, I'll make you regret your ravings. Song Qiuzi raged. He immediately raised his sword, moving so fast that most of the audience couldn't even see him clearly. His blade was already in front of Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi's figure flashed and landed behind Song Qiuzi, who stabbed empty air before turning to attack again. Long Fei easily parried a few of his blows. Song Qiuzi refused to believe it. He sped up his attacks, his figure flickering and his sword transforming into afterimages. Soon enough, it was impossible to see clearly. All they saw was Long Fei Yi's figure flickering in and out of existence. It was impossible to tell whether it was Song Qiuzi's figure or his sword. Long Fei Yi didn't move from his spot. It wasn't clear whether he was trapped or focused on defending himself. Han Yunxi didn't know martial arts, so she had no idea what was going on. Fortunately, old Kinzo had been explaining things to her the entire time. Long Fei Yi had been dealing with Song Qiuzi's attacks the entire time, making it impossible for Song Qiuzi to gain any advantage. Moreover, Song Qiuzi's fierce attacks consumed a lot of energy, so Long Fei Yi was able to deal with them without changing his stance. Han Yunxi watched as she listened, growing more and more nervous. That was because old Kinzo had said that Song Qiuzi would change his tactics very soon. As expected, Song Qiuzi suddenly flew away to land on one side and stop his attacks. His eyes were dark and gloomy. He wasn't willing to accept this, nor did he believe that Long Fei Yi could still hold out. Long Fei Yi's martial arts had improved greatly after entering closed-door cultivation. Most likely, he'd been cultivating internal energy for the past month. Most people didn't know the truth and assumed that he was simply being punished. However, Song Qiuzi was certain that Long Fei Yi had been in closed-door cultivation. Moreover, he'd come out prematurely with severe internal injuries. Long Fei Yi was simply holding on. No matter what, he wouldn't recover in less than a day, even if Li Qinshin came to his rescue. Song Qiuzi was certain of this. Today, he wasn't only here to take first place in the ranking matches, but also to take Long Fei Yi's life. Yesterday afternoon and all night, he'd been thinking about how to deal with Long Fei Yi and how to bite his weak spot. Since Long Fei Yi was suffering from internal injuries, he had to find a chance to compete with Long Fei Yi in internal energy. Once Long Fei Yi used up too much energy, he'd be unable to suppress his internal injuries. Then he'd trample Long Fei Yi beneath his feet. Once he got rid of Long Fei Yi, he and the heretical sword sect's leader would be able to surround and attack Li Qinshin. Thus, once they won today's battle, Celestial Mountain's internal strife would begin. He hadn't planned to seize the position so soon, but he could only blame Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi for pushing him too hard. That slut Duanmu Yao for being too stupid. Song Qiuzi suddenly gripped his sword with both hands and flew into the air. His Xinqing sword flared with sword on, dazzling like the stars. Countless onlookers looked up and gasped in amazement. What happened just then was only a warm-up. Now the real battle was about to begin. Then would Long Fei Yi, who'd been on the defensive this entire time, be ready to attack as well? Everyone could tell that Song Qiuzi was staking everything on this one throw. He'd poured all of his internal energy into this one strike. Since Song Qiuzi made the first move, he was destined to take the initiative. Faced with such powerful sword chi, Long Fei Yi had nowhere to run. His only option was to meet the attack head-on. I'll accompany you to the end. This strike would decide victory or defeat between the two. Heaven and Earth on Celestial Mountain. For a moment, silence fell upon the scene. In the midst of it, Long Fei raised his head to look, his slender fingers covering his brows to hide the emotions on his face. Soon enough, everyone's attention rested on him. No one dared to blink, afraid to miss the moment he took to the skies. But Long Fei Yi didn't chase after him. He only looked up. Above his head, Song Qiuzi's sword on grew more and more dazzling while his sword chi grew more and more intense. Soon enough, the onlookers could feel the killing intent shooting towards them like a sharp blade that could scratch their skin. Han Yunxi, who didn't know martial arts, felt it even more clearly. She couldn't even sit still and wanted to lean back. Meanwhile, Kinzo's internal energy was gone, but the dense true chi in his body was still enough to protect his body. He didn't move at all. Grandmaster, what's Song Qiuzi trying to do? Why is Long Fei Yi? Han Yunxi asked. Don't worry. Fei can handle it. Kinzo's worried gaze betrayed his heart. Yes, he was worried, nervous, and perturbed. Why isn't Long Fei Yi chasing after him? Why isn't he making a move? Kinzo could tell that Song Qiuzi had made a decisive move. He must have guessed that Long Fei Yi had internal injuries and was forcing Long Fei Yi to use all his internal energy to deal with him. Actually, Long Fei Yi only needed to use either his Lustbite energy or his 8th level Nirvana heart energy to beat Song Qiuzi to a pulp. Long Fei Yi still hasn't made a move. Has something happened to his Lustbite energy again? Kinzo's heart hung in the air. Han Yunxi no longer trusted him. She could tell that this wasn't Long Fei Yi's style at all. With his temper, he would never let Song Qiuzi run rampant for so long. He would have ended the battle as soon as possible. Just what was going on? In the silence of the crowd, Song Qiuzi's sword on reached its peak. No one could see the Qing Xian sword in his hand, but a blinding flash of white light like a bolt of lightning descending towards Long Fei Yi. Thump! 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 Han Yunxi's heart pounded, so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. Kinzo's ashen face was drained of blood, and his lips were clearly trembling. Song Qiuyi shut her eyes. Look, Song Qiuzi's won for sure. Second elder was pleasantly surprised. Third elder nodded his head without hesitation. Granny Yu sat below the stage, her hands clenched tightly. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and whispered to her disciples, pass on orders to prepare for battle. You must guard the bridgeheads. Not long after, the entire place became indescribably quiet. Almost everyone unconsciously held their breaths as they watched and waited without blinking. They were waiting for Song Qiuzi's sword to strike. Long Fei Yi die, Song Qiuzi shouted as his sword slashed downwards like a bolt of lightning. Whoosh! Suddenly, a shrill whistle pierced through the air. Everyone assumed that it was the sound of Song Qiuzi's sword on, but never expected it to be the sound of Long Fei's sword. How much power had been imbued into his sword? How could a casual wave of his hand have enough power to slice through the air? So Long Fei Yi was going to counterattack? In a flash, the crowd recovered their wits. In the blink of an eye, Long Fei Yi's profound frost sword flared with white light that was even more dazzling than the sun. It completely overshadowed Song Qiuzi's sword on, causing both Song Qiuzi and his profound frost sword to dim. Dazzling sword on and frigid sword chi filled the air like a rainbow as it rose from the ground to the skies, toppling mountains and overturning seas. Clang! The two sword-ons collided. More accurately, it was Long Fei Yi's sword chi that struck Song Qiuzi's sword chi with an earth-shattering boom. Amidst the noise, the two sword-ons didn't seem to be in a stalemate. Long Fei Yi's sword chi simply overwhelmed Song Qiuzi's and sent the latter's sword chi flying back into his body. Song Qiuzi took the brunt of his own strength and spat out a mouthful of blood as his body bent over from the force. But Long Fei Yi's sword chi followed up and sent him flying into the air. Soon enough, he fell back down unconscious, his life or death unclear. No one had expected this outcome. Long Fei Yi's sword chi had doubled the strength of Song Qiuzi's sword chi. How is this possible? This man is too terrifying. Silence returned to the crowd. Only Long Fei Ye's footsteps could be heard. His face was as cold as ice, his gaze ruthless. Step by step, he walked at Song Xiuzi's side and kicked him off the stage. "Father!" Song Xiuying wailed as she threw herself at him. "Long Fei Yi won? Long Fei Yi won. He won. Master, he won, he won." Han Yunqi rejoiced as she leapt to her feet. But before the crowd could accept the result, a figure flew out of the crowd and landed on the stage. He was tall and slender, his bearing elegant and graceful. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression gentle. Is he going to participate in the ranking matches? Who is he? Chapter 748. Who was he? Everyone was curious. If Song Xiuzi hadn't fainted, he would have been even more shocked because this was none other than his eldest disciple, He Ilian. He had been recommended to Celestial Mountain at the age of 5 by a renowned Jianghu clan, the He clan fort. Because of his good birth and rare talents, Song Xiuzi took him in directly. Before him, Song Xiuzi's Lockhart courtyard had taken in many disciples, but He Ilian was the first one he'd acknowledged. Thus, he was the eldest senior brother everyone talked about. He Ilian had a gentle personality and a good temper. He was cultured and refined in his dealings with others, and was very modest. He was the famous handsome gentleman of Celestial Mountain, and his martial arts skills were outstanding among the disciples of the two depositories and courtyards. Even so, he was no match for Long Fei Yi. Even if Long Fei Yi hadn't gone into closed-door cultivation for a month to obtain the Lustbite energy or Old Man Kinzo's 8th level Nirvana hard arts, He Ilian still wouldn't be Long Fei Yi's match. He Ilian's internal energy was only at the 5th level at most. No matter the reason, the rules of the ranking matches stated that anyone who stepped onto the stage had to fight. What was He Ilian doing here? Seeking death? Amidst the crowd's astonishment, He Ilian sighed and bowed to Long Fei Yi. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, this one is He Ilian, the eldest disciple of Lockhart Courtyard. Please instruct me." Song Xiuying supported Song Xiuzi and shouted, "Eldest senior brother, get down here. Have you gone mad?" "Junior sister, although eldest senior brother's skills aren't up to par, I have to avenge Master. Master is the head of Celestial Mountain's elders. So how could he tolerate such humiliation?" So speaking, he turned towards the Lockhart Courtyard disciples. "Master may have fallen, but our Lockhart Courtyard hasn't. We won't fall either, right?" Immediately, some of the disciples agreed. "That's right. Eldest senior brother, you're the best." Following that, the crowd began to support him, all of them agitated and filled with righteous indignation. It was as if Long Fei Yi had bullied Song Xiuzi in Lockhart Courtyard. "Eldest senior brother, you're the best. Even if you fall, there's still us. Let's connect. Eldest senior brother, even if we lose to a level 8 expert like Qin Wang, it's still a glorious defeat. You're much stronger than him." Hee, I didn't expect His Highness Duke of Qin's martial arts to improve so quickly. Even Master is no match for him. Eldest senior brother, you are the pride of Lockhart Yard for challenging an 8th stage martial artist as a 5th stage martial artist. In our hearts, you are much stronger than Qin Wang. His words only made Han Yunqi's temper flare up nonstop. These people are so shameless. It's no wonder they're Song Xiuzi's disciples. They're both hypocritical and hypocritical. His words were so sour that they could kill people. It wasn't like Long Fei Yi had kicked down Lockhart Yard's door and challenged them, bullying the weak with the strong. This was clearly a ranking battle that he was willing to participate in. This was supposed to be a battle between the strong, but a weakling like He Ilian wanted to avenge his master. His courage was commendable, but before the battle even started, he kept emphasizing that he was the weakling. He made it sound like Long Fei Yi had done something to him, like Long Fei Yi was bullying him if he didn't let him hit him, like Long Fei Yi had an unfair advantage if he won. How disgusting. Long Fei Yi gave He Ilian a disdainful look, his voice as cold as ice. "Granny Yu, your lordship's battle with Song Xiuzi isn't over yet. Where did this man come from?" His words silenced the crowd into an indescribable silence. The Lockhart Courtyard disciples all gaped. not daring to utter a word. Song Chiozi had already been knocked unconscious off the stage. Could it be that Long Fei Yi was bent on killing him? Granny Yu immediately rose to her feet. Someone come. He Ilian is interfering with the ranking battles. Take him away for questioning. Abruptly, Song Chioying cried out, My father admitted defeat. My father admitted defeat. Lockhart Courtyard admitted defeat, sob sob. Song Chioying wasn't clear on what her father and eldest martial brother had been plotting all this time, but she knew that the sect head would definitely settle accounts with him as soon as he lost. The debts from Grand Concubine Yi and Duanmu Yao, as well as the various crimes her father had committed over the past few years, all of which would be hard to suppress. Thus, nothing could happen to eldest senior brother. At least Lockhart Courtyard had a successor with him around. If anything happened to him, what would a woman like her do? Over the years, she had used her father's status to gain control of many of Celestial Mountain's businesses. She could handle business matters, but she didn't know a thing about Lockhart Courtyard. Long Fei Yi, my father admitted defeat. Song Chiozi admitted defeat. So your battle is over. Song Chioying cried. Long Fei Ye's face was expressionless, but Song Chioying quickly shouted, He Ilian, get down here. Lockhart Courtyard admitted defeat. So get down here. Song Chioying set Song Chiozi aside and rushed to Granny Yu. Annie Yu, the rules of the ranking matches are that anyone who admits defeat will fight. My father admitted defeat. I'm his daughter, so he can admit defeat on his behalf. Many of the disgruntled spectators were pleased to hear him admit defeat willingly, especially Han Yunxi. The Lockhart Courtyard people were simply looking for their own humiliation. Granny Yu glanced at Long Fei Yi, then at the three white-haired elders at the judges' table. These were the retired elders of Celestial Mountain. They were the true, honored elders of the Celestial Mountain and spent most of their time in secluded cultivation. They hadn't shown their faces for over a decade. Although they didn't participate in any worldly conflicts, including the factions of Celestial Mountain, Elder Kinzo still invited them here in hopes of intimidating the restless heretical sword sect. Kinzo kept staring at Ilian with a stern expression. Soon enough, one of the honored elders nodded and announced, Long Fei Yi wins this round. As soon as he said this, Ilian, whose arms were restrained by the guards, immediately broke free. He said loudly, Then I challenge your Highness Duke of Qin in my own name. Is that enough? He's finally showing his true face. Song Chioying gave a start. Everyone else was surprised and confused. But Long Fei Ye's eyes were sharp enough to notice the strength of Ilian's legs as soon as he jumped onto the stage. This fellow's martial arts had to be better than the crowd imagined. Since he dared to step onto the stage, he must have made preparations. Long Fei Yi knew that he had to end the fight quickly as well. Just then, he'd used too much strength in his fight with Song Chiozi. Now his lust-bite energy seemed to be flowing in the opposite direction. He didn't have much time left. Long Fei Yi pointed his Xuanhuan sword at Ilian as he ordered, Draw your sword. But Ilian didn't. A sinister look flashed past his eyes before he bowed modestly. I ask your Highness Duke of Qin to show mercy. Long Fei Yi didn't hesitate to slash out with his sword as fast as lightning. But Ilian moved like a shadow and dodged the blow, leaving only his clothes torn to shreds. What incredible speed! The crowd couldn't see Long Fei Ye's sword clearly, much less Ilian's figure. Now the crowd realized that Ilian wasn't a simple man. He wasn't here to avenge Song Chiozi, but to challenge Long Fei Yi for a spot in the ranking matches. This fellow hid his skills well. To move so quickly, one had to have at least 6th-level internal energy. In other words, Ilian's martial arts skills were already on par with the other 3 elders. How unexpected! Second and third elder exchanged glances. Song Chiozi hid his disciple well. I never expected it. I never expected it. Did Song Chiozi really teach him? Granny Yu was so moved that she stood up. She marveled at Ilian's profound internal energy at the same time as she pondered another question. Who taught Ilian his lightness skills? In my impression, lightness skills aren't Song Chiozi's strong suit. Long Fei Yi was surprised as well. His sword didn't stop but struck out multiple times. But Aelian dodged even faster than before. Aelian's speed made many people think of the Shadow Clan. Once upon a time, they were the protectors of Western Qin's imperial clan. In a flash, all sorts of guesses rose. Although Aelian's martial arts weren't as good as Long Fei Ye's, his lightness skills were enough to avoid Long Fei Ye's attacks. As long as he had enough stamina, he could drag this out with Long Fei Yi. Although he wouldn't win, he wouldn't lose either. At the end of this duel, it would be a battle of endurance. Han Yunxi couldn't believe it. Could it be that the white-robed gentleman who saved me was this guy? How could that be? She shook her head. Although the resemblance was uncanny, she still hoped it wasn't. The white-clothed young master was the most stunning person in her life. He was an unforgettable chance encounter in her life. He was a beautiful accident that she might never meet again. She would rather never meet him again than let Aelian destroy this beautiful moment. She wanted to summon Lil Thing so it could recognize him, but Lil Thing was still sleeping in the poison pond. In the end, she couldn't bear to disturb it. Long Fei Ye's attacks were all meant to test Aelian and observe his lightness skills. If he hadn't seen the true shadow arts before and been familiar with Gu Beiwei, he would have misunderstood long ago. Other than the members of the Shadow Clan, no one else would be able to cultivate the shadow arts. At most, they would only learn the surface of it. Aelian definitely wasn't a member of the Shadow Clan. Long Fei's sword grew faster and faster. Although it was only a single sword, its speed was so fast that it split into dozens of afterimages to surround and attack Aelian from all sides. He had no choice but to back away. Obviously, the speed of his retreat wasn't as fast as the speed of his left and right movements. Although Aelian was an accident, but in less than a cup of tea's time, Long Fei Yi had grasped the other party's weak point. Very quickly, Long Fei Ye's sword landed on Aelian's shoulder and forcefully chopped off one of Aelian's arms. Many female disciples cried out, but before they could stop, Long Fei Ye's terrifying sword chi chopped off Aelian's other arm. Aelian became an armless person just like that. But what was unexpected was that his emotions were so calm that it was frightening. These two arms didn't seem to be his, and he didn't mind at all. His mind was still focused on dodging and evading Long Fei Ye's sword. Smart people could tell that Aelian didn't have the extravagant hope of using escape as an attack to win the ranking battle. He seemed to have predicted the result of the competition. Then, what was his real motive for coming up the stage? Why was he delaying and wasting time? Chapter 749. Why was Aelian fighting? Was it for himself or Tsang Qiuzi's schemes? Or did he have other powers behind him? None of the spectators realized the severity of the situation. They watched as Long Fei Yi hacked down again and again, then looked at Aelian, who couldn't dodge and had chunks of flesh sliced off by the profound frost sword. Soon enough, Aelian was bleeding profusely from both sides of his abdomen. But he was still holding on. He didn't even crease his brows as he kept dodging, stubbornly refusing to fall. Everyone was shaken to the core by the sight. No one knew when Long Fei Yi would end Aelian's life. Although Long Fei Yi didn't say a word, everyone guessed that Long Fei Yi wasn't using his full strength and was waiting for Aelian to admit defeat. Finally, Song Qiuing couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Eldest senior brother, just admit defeat. Admit defeat." Song Qiuing's voice sounded especially desolate in the silence, but Aelian didn't seem to hear her. He remained indifferent and continued dodging. As he dodged, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. That's right, it wasn't just blood that flew in all directions. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere as Long Fei's sword sliced off his flesh. Even a handsome, jade-faced gentleman was about to be cut into pieces. Everyone had a compassionate heart. Besides the disciples of Lockhart Courtyard, many others began to feel sorry for Aelian. Even Granny Yu's disciples began to criticize Long Fei Yi. Isn't Long Fei Yi going too far? Suddenly, Song Qiuing rushed to the front of the stage and shouted, "Long Fei Yi, you might as well kill him with one strike. My senior brother has no grudge against you. If you want to avenge Han Yunxi, Then come at us father and daughter. Yes, Helion had no grudge against Long Fei Yi. Why would an 8th rank expert like him waste time tormenting Helion like this? In the beginning, everyone suspected that Helion was deliberately stalling for time and had other motives. But now, almost everyone suspected that Long Fei Yi was stalling for time. Long Fei Yi was stalling for time. Only Han Yunxi and Kinzo knew that something had happened to Long Fei Yi. It was not Long Fei Yi who was stalling for time. It was Helion who was stalling for time with his own life. Long Fei Yi was pinned down by Helion. Master, what happened to him? His internal injuries haven't completely healed, right? Han Yunxi asked anxiously. Kinzo's old man frowned and stared at Long Fei Yi. No one knows if he did not want to answer Han Yunxi, or he was too nervous to hear Han Yunxi's question. Actually, from the moment Long Fei Yi discovered Helion's weakness, he had sensed that Long Fei Yi was starting to falter. In a fight between high-level experts, the discovery of an opponent's fatal weakness meant victory was set. Moreover, Long Fei Yi's style was to kill Helion within 3 strikes. However, he had already struck so many times and injured Helion to such an extent, yet he still hadn't killed Helion. Those who didn't know the situation would only assume that Long Fei Yi was tormenting Helion on purpose to get back at Song Qiuzi. But he knew the truth and knew that Long Fei Yi couldn't kill Helion. His every strike was meant to kill Helion, but none of them were accurate. Even so, Long Fei Yi could still use his powerful sword qi to attack Helion. Helion wasn't Song Qiuzi, so all he needed to do was use his 8th level Nirvana Heart Arts powers. A single strike of sword qi was enough to shatter Helion's organs. But Long Fei Yi didn't do that. Not to mention sword qi. Even his swordsmanship was very weak now. If it wasn't for the fact that he was still standing on the stage, motionless and expressionless, everyone present would have noticed that something was wrong with him. What now? Kinzo was about to lose his mind. They'd focused all their energy on Song Qiuzi, but never expected this Cheng Yaojin to show up. If this kept up, Long Fei would fall in a cultivation deviation very soon. Kinzo was certain that Helion knew something. But besides him and Long Fei Yi, who else on Celestial Mountain didn't know about the lust bite energy? Even Han Yunxi, who'd been guarding Long Fei Yi's identity every day, had no idea. How could anyone have leaked the information? Kinzo didn't have time to consider such details. His top priority now was to end the ranking matches as soon as possible. If Helion was stubbornly holding on and refusing to admit defeat, then what about Long Fei Yi? Kinzo immediately rejected the idea, leaving aside Long Fei Yi's refusal. Even he, as his master, wouldn't allow Long Fei Yi to admit defeat. Such a proud person, such a noble king, such an indomitable man. How could he admit defeat? But what else could he do? Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi suddenly cried out. Kinzo recovered his wits and saw Long Fei Yi fall to one knee as soon as he swung his sword. That sword could have pierced Helion's heart, but because he knelt, the sword fell and stabbed empty air. Instantly, everyone stopped talking. Everyone was dumbfounded. Second elder, third elder, and Granny Yu stood up at the same time. They were all flabbergasted. They didn't expect such a thing to happen. Even the white-haired supremacy on the high seat was flabbergasted. He looked at each other. Long Fei Yi. What happened to him? Kinzo's proudest disciple, an 8th grade Brahma at such a young age. He was the miracle of Celestial Mountain, the miracle of the martial arts world. Why did he suddenly fall to his knees on the stage? What happened to him? Did he have serious internal injuries? He didn't do it on purpose. He just couldn't kill Helion? So Helion really did it on purpose. He was deliberately stalling for time. Helion knew that Long Fei Yi had internal injuries? How despicable. Helion took the chance to retreat far, far away. Even though his arms were crippled, his body covered in cuts and bruises, and he could collapse at any moment. His lips curved into a sinister smile. He had to hold on. No matter what, he had to hold on until his last breath. Even if he died, he had to wait for Long Fei Yi to die first. His Lord Master had said that soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. He'd arranged for him to come to Celestial Mountain and lie in wait by Tsang Qiuzi's side for years. Today, he could finally serve his master loyally. He had once been confused and doubtful. Once, he'd secretly run down the mountain to find his Lord Master and ask him what he wanted him to do. His innate talent was extraordinary, but he had to hide it. Over the years, he'd watched Long Fei Yi steal the limelight on Celestial Mountain and in the martial arts world. Only he knew how unreconciled he was. He even considered betraying his Lord Master and revealing his true skills. Then he'd swear fealty to Tsang Qiuzi and follow him to seize the position of Celestial Mountain's sect leader. But in the end, he endured because he feared his Lord Master. The consequences of betraying him were unimaginable. All he could do was wait with no destination in mind. Until this time, when Long Fei Yi brought Han Yunxi to Celestial Mountain, he'd sent multiple secret letters to his Lord Master to report everything that had happened on the mountain. It wasn't until last night that his Lord Master sent him a secret missive. The contents of the letter shocked him so much that he couldn't sleep all night. His lordship had predicted that Tsang Qiuzi would lose and ordered him to challenge Long Fei on the battle stage after the man's defeat. He was to only defend and stall for time as much as possible. The last line of the missive was that this was only a chance. It might not succeed, but if he didn't grasp it, he'd never get another chance. He didn't understand and suspected that his Lord Master was sending him to his death. Even when the ranking battles began, he still hadn't decided to fight. But when he saw Tsang Qiuzi get knocked off the stage in a flash, he believed his Lord Master's words. He decisively stepped onto the stage. Actually, Long Fei's strength had begun to fall short of his wishes, but he was still apprehensive. Like everyone else, he suspected that Long Fei was tormenting him on purpose. But now he completely trusted his Lord Master. He was grateful to him, but even more grateful for his own decision. Long Fei Yi's condition was clearly due to internal injuries, and very serious ones at that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen to his knees for no reason. Long Fei Yi must have gone mad. Even with internal injuries, he still dared to use such powerful sword qi against Tsang Qiuzi. In his current situation, he would suffer from qi deviation if he was lucky, or die if his qi and blood were to flow in reverse. Helion looked at Long Fei Yi's ashen face, and his smile widened. He couldn't wait any longer. Even if he died, he'd beat Long Fei Yi in the ranking battles before dying. After all these years, he could finally beat Long Fei Yi. Today was worth it. Long Fei Yi knelt on one knee on the ground, both hands propping up his sword. His head was bowed, and at close range, one could see the sweat on his temples and veins bulging on his forehead. Although he didn't show any of it, all he did was kneel on one knee. But beneath the surface, what were the waves raging inside him? He gritted his teeth and endured. Admit defeat, or else he'll die. Han Yunxi stood up and prepared to rush down the mountain, but Kinzo stopped her. He won't admit defeat. If you go now, you'll only affect him. I can't watch him die. I can't. Han Yunxi's voice was choked with sobs. She wanted to rush down the mountain, but Kinzo grabbed her hand. Han Yunxi, if you understand his pride, you can't let him admit defeat. Han Yunxi gave a start as tears streamed down her face. Grandmaster, are you going to watch him die? Can you do it? Silence reigned as everyone focused on the stage. Helion and Long Fei Yi were about 15 paces apart. One was standing, bleeding profusely, while the other was kneeling with his head bowed. It was hard to tell what was going on. Time trickled by. Kinzo couldn't answer Han Yunxi, but he was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof. Fei couldn't admit defeat or withdraw from the competition. The only way was to keep fighting. If that was the case, he had to hurry. If he delayed any longer, his lustbite energy would reverse even more. Once it reached the point where his nirvana heart arts couldn't suppress it, even the gods wouldn't be able to save him. Why? Why isn't he moving? Could it be that he's already... Kinzo didn't dare to think any further. It was at this moment that Helion suddenly strode towards Long Fei Yi. He had been waiting this entire time for Long Fei Yi to continue his attacks. As long as Long Fei Yi kept attacking, he'd definitely enter a cultivation deviation. But Long Fei Yi still didn't move. He was planning to keep waiting, but he couldn't hold on any longer. Although he was standing, he could faint at any moment. Blood flowed from his body nonstop, and he was afraid that Long Fei Yi wouldn't make a move before he died. No matter what, he wouldn't let such a good chance slip by. Chapter 750. Long Fei Yi didn't make a move, but Elian was determined to win. He walked over step by step, and when he was 5 steps away, he used the last of his strength. His footsteps were like illusions, and in an instant, he was in front of Long Fei Yi. He kicked fiercely at Long Fei Yi's heart. Almost at the same time, a sharp blade jumped out diagonally, pointing directly at Long Fei Yi's heart. Who knew that Long Fei Yi's movements were even faster than his? Other than the 3 venerables and the old Kinzo, probably no one else present saw the process of Long Fei Yi's movements. Everyone only saw the result. The result was that Long Fei Yi grabbed Elian's heel, and the blade was almost at Long Fei Yi's heart, almost piercing through. This scene only lasted for a moment. Long Fei Yi pulled fiercely, and Elian's entire body fell to the ground, lying on his back. He wanted to kick with his other leg, but Long Fei Yi stomped down fiercely, directly crippling Elian's leg. Then, he pulled Elian's leg, which was hiding the blade, and fiercely pressed it in front of Elian. The ligaments of martial artists were all good, but Elian's thigh was still in unbearable pain. He was already on his last breath, and seeing the blade near his foot, he opened his eyes wide in fear. Long Fei Yi held his ankle tightly, pointing the blade at his eyes. Long Fei Yi squatted beside him and lowered his voice. "Speak. Who told you to deliberately delay? You faked it?" Elian's voice was very weak, but there was a stubbornness that couldn't be ignored. Long Fei Yi coldly snorted. "It seems that you were tricked. Dying here, it's a waste of your good martial arts." Elian couldn't believe his ears. Long Fei Yi's abnormality just now was actually faked. He suddenly felt like a joke. He was deceived, not only by his lord, but also by Long Fei Yi. His hopes were dashed. Only then did he begin to realize that both of his hands were crippled. He didn't even have a complete corpse after he died. How pathetic. He couldn't accept it. Song Chozi will die without a doubt. You could have inherited the position of Lockhart Courtyard's head. Long Fei Yi's lips curled into a sneer as he said in a low voice, "Tell this prince, who allowed you to participate in the battle, and who allowed you to deliberately delay." These words finally evoked Elian's hatred. "Long Fei Yi, come here. I'll tell you." Long Fei Yi leaned closer and saw Elian open his mouth and say 6 words. His voice was too soft, and he didn't know if Long Fei Yi heard it clearly. Long Fei Yi was just about to get up when Elian used the last of his strength to suddenly straighten his body, meeting the blade of the wind blade at the tip of his feet. The sharp blade entered his throat, and Elian finally took his last breath. Long Fei Yi didn't even look at him as he stood up. Elian was dead, and Long Fei Yi had won. Everyone stared blankly at the silent battle stage, feeling like everything that had just happened was a dream. It was thrilling to the core, strange, and unpredictable. No one could tell what was real and what was fake. Finally, the results of the battle were clear. Elian was dead. He was really dead. There would be no more surprises. Long Fei Yi's proud figure was still standing straight. Aside from his pale face, he didn't look as wretched as before. He stood high on the battle stage and looked down at the crowd. Finally, his cold gaze rested on the Lockhart Courtyard disciples before he pointed his profound frost sword at them. "Who else wants to go up?" "This prince will," he said. The Lockhart Courtyard disciples all bowed their heads, not daring to make a sound. Song Chuing hugged her father tightly, not daring to cry out loud. None of the others dared to move either. Almost everyone believed that Long Fei Yi had pretended to kneel on the ground in order to draw Elian closer so that he could seize the opportunity to end the battle quickly. Finally, everyone stopped doubting him and began to seriously ponder over this man's abilities. At this moment, Long Fei Yi held his sword with one hand behind his back and asked loudly, "Who else wants to fight?" As soon as he finished speaking, the profound frost sword shone brightly, intimidating everyone present. What else was there to ponder? What else was there to hesitate about? Long Fei Ye's sword chi was really above the 8th grade of Nirvana realm. It was much stronger than Elder Kenzo. Many people present were filled with admiration and reverence. The Lockhart Courtyard disciples didn't dare to have any thoughts of rebellion. They only hoped that Long Fei Yi and Elder Kenzo would let them off easily. Only Elder Kenzo and Han Yunshi stared fixedly at Long Fei Yi, extremely nervous. Elder Kenzo was so nervous that his palms were sweating. He knew that Long Fei Yi was actually forcing himself. He originally thought that Long Fei Yi would fall after killing Heilian. He never expected that Long Fei Yi would still be able to stand upright and provoke Lockhart Courtyard with every word. He was still like a king, looking down on the disciples of Heaven Mountain. His last sword was not only to intimidate everyone present, but also to intimidate the Evil Sword sect. However, he had to pay a huge price for this sword. The lust-bite power in his body had already gone against the flow. No one answered the question in the silence. Before the honored elders announced the end of the ranking matches, the sword sect master's mind was already stretched taut. He didn't dare to relax, not because he was afraid of accidents, but because there had been too many. Long Fei couldn't afford any more surprises. Right now, a single 4th rank expert was enough to destroy Long Fei Yi. At this moment, second elder walked out from his seat. This Elder Kinzo's heart was hanging in midair. Han Yunshi held her breath, her entire body trembling. No! She couldn't believe it. Second elder walked step by step towards the stage from the spectator stands. Long Fei didn't move a muscle, his face expressionless, but his heart was filled with turbulent waves. He was clearer than anyone else about his current situation. Suddenly, second elder stopped and clasped his hands towards Long Fei Yi. "The student has surpassed the master. Fei, you are the pride of both the honored master and Celestial Mountain. Martial Uncle accepts you." This, is he admitting defeat? Is he here to express his sincerity? Seeing this, third elder hurried over as well and clasped his hands towards Long Fei Yi. "Fei, third martial uncle accepts you as well. You've broken through to the 8th level of Nirvana Hard Arts at such a young age. Your future is limitless." Now that these two fence-sitters had confirmed their positions, who else would step up to the stage? Elder Kinzo's heart finally recovered from its suspense. Han Yunshi exhaled deeply as well. She wanted nothing more than to rush over and hug Long Fei Yi, but she had to endure. She could only hope that Long Fei Yi would hurry back to the peak to treat his wounds. Granny Yu stood up. "Honored elders, since no one else wants to fight, why don't we?" The 3 honored elders looked at Long Fei Yi with admiration in their eyes. Of course, they could tell that Long Fei Yi was stubbornly holding on. Soon enough, one of the honored elders stood up and announced that Long Fei Yi had taken first place in the ranking battles, while Tsang Xiuzi was second. Rather than calling this a ranking battle, it was more like a competition for supremacy. Long Fei Yi turned around and clasped his hands towards the 3 honored elders before flying to the peak. He saw Elder Kenzo and Han Yunshi waiting on the spectator stones, but he didn't seek them out. Instead, he went straight to Jiexong Hall. Kenzo and Han Yunshi immediately chased after him. By the time they reached Jiexong Hall, they saw Long Fei Yi kneeling before the gates, coughing up blood. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunshi's heart nearly stopped beating. She rushed to Long Fei Ye's side and saw that Long Fei Ye's face was shockingly pale. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with a coldness that felt foreign to her. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Despite his condition, he still tried to comfort Han Yunshi. "I'm fine. Be good. I'm just—" Before he could finish speaking, he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Before he could even react, the blood he spat out had already turned black. This black color was not true black, but a dark red color due to the blood stasis. It was so red that it was almost black. Han Yunshi scrambled to take out all of the life-saving pills from her medical pouch and fed them to Long Fei Yi. But it was no use. She finally managed to feed him, but he immediately spat it out. It gushed out of his mouth along with his blood. Long Fei, don't scare me, all right? Long Fei Yi. Tell me what to do. How can I help you? Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi. You can't leave me behind. You can't. Han Yunxi had never realized that she was so useless. She couldn't help at all. She didn't know a thing. No matter how she asked, Long Fei Yi didn't answer her. Even though he was still conscious, he didn't even have the energy to answer her. When he was killing He Lian, his nirvana power had started to flow in reverse. He had clenched his teeth and struck out with his last sword. He knew that without that sword, he wouldn't be able to intimidate second clan elder and third clan elder. He definitely wouldn't be able to intimidate the evil sword sect. Only with that sword would everyone believe that he was pretending to be weak. Blood continued to flow out of his mouth, as though it would never stop. Han Yunxi had already broken down. She grabbed on a Kinzo elder's sleeves tightly. Save him. I beg you. You must save him. Kinzo elder was also on the verge of breaking down. His heart was in indescribable pain. He knew that the peace of Heaven Mountain was preserved, but his beloved disciple's life might not be preserved. He muttered to himself, as long as it's a fourth-grade inner force, it will be able to protect him. You have to save him. You're the sect leader of Heaven Mountain. You must have a way. Han Yunxi screamed crazily. Who could she ask for help from? Who could Long Fei Yi ask for help from? Long Fei Yi had to risk his life to protect Heaven Mountain's peace and intimidate the evil sword sect. However, there were so many fourth-grade experts in Heaven Mountain. She couldn't ask for help. The only person she could ask for help from was Kinzo Elder. The only person who knew about this was Kinzo Elder. Once the wolves, tigers, and leopards outside knew that Long Fei Yi was seriously injured, would they still let them live? Han Yunxi knew that Kinzo Elder had lost all his inner force. However, she still tugged on Kinzo Elder's sleeves and begged. I beg you, as long as you can help him. Master, I beg you to think of a way. Long Fei Yi can't die. He can't die. Han Yunxi's cries broke Kinzo Elder's heart. He threw caution to the wind and ordered, Men, bring Long Fei Yi to Jiucheng Palace. Whoever dares to spread this news will be killed without mercy. He was about to leave when Han Yunxi grabbed onto him. Where are you going? To find the revered sir. Only the revered sir can save him now. The revered sir had never interfered in worldly affairs. Even if Heaven Mountain was in a life and death situation, the revered sir would not interfere. They only studied sword techniques. It was already an exception to invite the three of them to oversee the ranking tournament. Whether the revered sir was willing to save him, Kinzo Elder was not sure. However, he had to try. Chapter 751. After the Kinzo Elder left, a few attendants helped Han Yunxi carry Long Fei Yi to the 9th floor palace. Along the way, blood splattered all over the floor. Han Yunxi glanced back, but her vision was blurry. She only felt that the long corridor had been dyed red, as if the entire world had been dyed red. It was so red that it seemed impossible to wash it off. The attendants placed Long Fei Yi on the bed and retreated to one side. Long Fei Yi was already unconscious. His pale face and the traces of blood at the corners of his mouth were a stark contrast of white and red. It was a glaring sight to behold. Han Yunxi knew that Long Fei Yi's blood was flowing in the wrong direction. If he wasn't treated in time, even the gods wouldn't be able to save him. His life was fading away along with the blood that gushed out of his mouth. Han Yunxi pulled at her sleeves to wipe away all traces of blood from Long Fei's mouth. Very soon, both of her sleeves were dyed red. She wiped with her hands, desperately wiping. As soon as the blood gushed out, she wiped it away. But she couldn't outrun the speed of the blood. The blood was right in front of her eyes, but she couldn't wipe it all away. It was as if Long Fei Yi was right in front of her eyes, but she couldn't grab hold of him no matter how hard she tried. He could leave her at any moment and leave her forever. She was afraid. Her hands trembled, her body trembled, and her voice quavered. Don't! Long Fei Yi. Fei, don't scare me, all right? Since she couldn't wipe away the blood, she covered Long Fei Ye's mouth with her hands. But it was no use. None of it worked. Fresh blood still seeped out from between her fingers to drip onto the pure white bedding. It was a startling reminder that this wasn't a dream, but reality. What should she do? Long Fei Yi, tell me. What should I do? Long Fei Yi. Don't be like this. I beg you, please don't be like this. Long Fei Yi. Wake up. Long Fei Yi. You promised me. You promised to go down the mountain with me. You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed. Long Fei Yi. How dare you lie to me? Long Fei Yi. How can you do this? How can that be? She had imagined countless possibilities of her going down the mountain, and secretly made countless preparations. But she had never thought that the ending would be like this. It wasn't that Long Fei Yi didn't want to go down the mountain with her, but he couldn't go down the mountain. He couldn't accompany her down the mountain. He didn't have the life to go down the mountain. Han Yunxi cried until her voice was hoarse. She sat by the bed and looked at Long Fei Yi. She muttered to herself, Long Fei Yi, you dare to lie to me. Aren't you afraid that I'll never believe you? Long Fei Yi, in the future, will I still have a chance to believe you? As she spoke, she couldn't stop crying. She threw herself on his body and cried loudly. Even if she was willing to believe him, but will there be a future? Will there be a chance? Long Fei Ye's body started to turn cold. Bang. The door was kicked open by Kenzo. 3 white-haired venerables followed him in. The smell of blood in the room made them frown. Before Kenzo could go down the mountain, the 3 venerables came to him. The 3 venerables knew that Long Fei Yi was seriously injured, so they came to save him. Long Fei Ye's martial arts were strong, but it wasn't enough to convince them. However, Long Fei Ye's tenacious willpower and unyielding stubbornness convinced them. They were all over 100 years old, but this was the first time they saw such a proud disciple of Tianshan. Even though she was reluctant and afraid, Han Yunxi still stepped aside. She didn't understand, so she didn't dare to make a sound. She was afraid that she would disturb the 3 venerables. The venerables checked Long Fei Ye's pulse and immediately ordered, all of you, go out and guard outside. Don't let anyone come near. All the attendants immediately left the room. Han Yunxi didn't want to leave. She wanted to say that she wouldn't disturb them. However, Kenzo looked at her and signaled her to wait outside. She shook her head silently. She really didn't want to leave. Kenzo waved his hand silently and insisted that she go out. At this time, one of the venerables helped Long Fei Yi up. The other venerables looked at Kenzo and asked coldly, what happened just now? Tell us. Kenzo quickly went forward, but he didn't forget to look at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi didn't dare to waste their time. She looked at Long Fei Yi and resolutely turned to leave. She personally closed the door behind her. Her legs turned to jelly and she collapsed at the door. Her heart had already collapsed. How could she still stand? At this time, Su Donglin heard the news and rushed over. When he saw esteemed Wang Fei sitting on the ground, he quickly came over to support her. Master, His Highness. Where is His Highness? Han Yunxi raised her head. Su Donglin was stunned and his heart suddenly ached. He had never seen esteemed Wang Fei cry before. Why was she crying like this? His Highness, Su Donglin was also shocked. He lost his balance and fell to the side. His Highness, he will be fine, Han Yunxi said coldly. Yes. His Highness is a good person. Nothing will happen to him, Su Donglin anxiously said. Actually, he had rushed over to deliver a secret letter. Ning Nin had sent him a very urgent letter. He didn't dare to open it and rushed over as soon as he received it. Now, seeing esteemed Wang Fei like this, how could he dare to take it out? Even if he took it out, esteemed Wang Fei wouldn't look at it. No matter how urgent the matter was, it wasn't as important as His Highness's life. After a while, there was no movement in the room. Su Donglin clearly saw esteemed Wang Fei's fingers tightly clasped together. Her fingers were clasped so tightly that the color had drained from her fingers. He thought for a long time, but didn't know how to persuade her. He could only hand over a clean handkerchief. Master, Wipe your tears. His Highness definitely doesn't want to see you cry. Han Yunqi looked at him in a daze and didn't move. Su Donglin was really afraid that his master would become stupid or go crazy. He quickly tried to persuade her. Master, when His Highness wakes up and sees you crying like this, his heart will ache. His Highness will feel terrible. Only then did Han Yunqi regain her senses. She carelessly wiped away her tears and stood up. She told herself, "Don't cry. Wait for him." Han Yunqi waited for a full 5 days and 5 nights. On the 5th night, Han Yunqi was on the verge of collapse. She really didn't cry. She was like a wooden puppet, staring at the tightly shut door. Su Donglin held a cup of water to her lips, but she didn't move at all. Su Donglin knew that if something happened to His Highness Duke of Qin, this woman wouldn't go crazy or become stupid. She would die. Finally, on the morning of the 6th day, the door creaked open. Elder Kinzo and the 3 honored elders walked out. Their expressions were very ugly. Han Yunqi opened her mouth to ask, but she couldn't make a sound. Her voice was completely hoarse. "Master, you?" Su Donglin couldn't hold it in anymore and cried. For the past 5 days and 5 nights, his master didn't drink a single drop of water. She didn't say a word. Although he was by her side, he really didn't know how she endured it. She cried until she was in despair. She cried until she was hoarse. Han Yunqi tried to open her mouth again, but she couldn't speak. The tears she had held back for 5 days silently flowed down her face. She didn't even dare to look at them, let alone rush in. The expressions on the faces of Elder Kinzo and the 3 honored elders terrified her. She was even willing to wait at the door until the end of time. At least there was still hope in her life. "What's wrong with His Highness Duke of Qin?" Su Donglin asked. In truth, he was also afraid, but his heart was broken by esteemed Wang Fei's silent question. He couldn't imagine how much heartache His Highness Duke of Qin would feel if he saw the magnificent Wang Fei crying like this. Without recuperating for a year or so, don't even think about collapsing. Elder Kinzo sighed heavily. As soon as he said this, Han Yunqi rushed in. She saw Wang Fei hadn't woken up, but lay quietly on the bed. He was no longer bleeding, but his entire body and face were covered in blood. Even the bed itself had been dyed a crimson red. Han Yunqi was less than 5 steps away from the bed. She stared at him in a daze. She could clearly feel that this man was getting further and further away from her. It turned out that the furthest distance wasn't 100 steps, but life and death. Even if she was always 100 steps away, she would still be able to see, hear, and know everything about him. At the very least, she would have the same sky, sun, moon, and stars as him. But life and death, that was a distance that couldn't be crossed no matter how hard she tried. She would never be able to cross it. After the 3 venerated elders left, Elder Kinzo entered the room. Su Donglin followed behind him. Several attendants were waiting at the door. 1 or 2 peeked inside but didn't dare to enter. Han Yunqi was silently wiping Wang Fei's face. She carefully wiped away all the blood on his face. His internal energy and blood flowed in the opposite direction. The 3 venerated elders paid a great price to barely save his life. Elder Kinzo said lightly, "Don't worry. The venerated elders used all their internal energy to protect his life. He won't die." Hearing this, Han Yunqi stopped. She wanted to ask, but her throat couldn't make a sound. Elder Kinzo finally noticed how haggard Han Yunqi was. Her originally spirited eyes seemed to have lost their soul. They were dim and lifeless. "Don't worry. You can't help. His injuries can only be healed with internal energy." Elder Kinzo sighed. "I'll pick a few people from Yuman's place later. Yuman can still trust them." Han Yunqi lowered her head and kept wiping his face. Elder Kinzo added, "Old man wants to know when he'll wake up too. Song Shozi has been convicted of his crimes. As for your identity as a poisons woman, you should have an explanation as well." Han Yunqi fell silent. Elder Kinzo had already told her everything she wanted to know. 3 days later, early in the morning, Han Yunqi was so tired that she fell asleep on her bed. In her dreams, someone seemed to be teasing her bangs. Her eyes flew open, and she saw Long Fei Yi looking at her with tender eyes filled with an indescribable tenderness. She gave a start, then grew alarmed. She rose to her feet to call Elder Kenzo. If Long Fei Yi woke up, shouldn't she find the venerated elders to take a look? Han Yunshi, come here. Long Fei Yi's voice was weak. Han Yunshi immediately ran back and was about to speak when she felt a stabbing pain in her throat. She could only write down what she wanted to say and bring it to Long Fei Yi for him to read. What she wrote was, "Where does it hurt? Where does it hurt? Tell me." These words sounded so familiar. A few days ago, he'd asked her the same question when he came out of closed-door cultivation and saw her covered in bruises. But Long Fei Yi didn't read the words, but stared at her for a long time before reaching out to stroke her throat. "Han Yunshi, why aren't you speaking?" Chapter 752. Why didn't Han Yunshi say anything? She had a lot to say. She had been hiding the words for 7 or 8 days, but she couldn't say them. Seeing that Long Fei Yi had woken up, she suddenly had nothing to say. She just wanted to ask him if he was well. Seeing Long Fei Yi's distressed gaze, she quickly wrote a few words on the paper, saying that her throat hurt and she couldn't make a sound for the time being. Actually, with Han Yunshi's usual meticulous nature, she would have noticed something amiss. Long Fei's first reaction was to touch her throat. His question was, "Why aren't you speaking?" Instead of, "What's wrong with your throat?" He seemed to have known that her throat was hoarse. He had been unconscious for so many days, so how did he know? Perhaps he really knew the truth, perhaps he knew how to guess. In any case, Han Yunshi didn't think too much about it. She was filled with gratitude and joy. As long as this man was alive and could wake up, it was more important than anything else. "Why does it hurt?" Long Fei Yi asked again. His weak voice was soft, and Han Yunshi's heart almost melted. She never knew that being able to hear his voice was such a wonderful thing. Han Yunshi thought for a moment and wrote another 4 words on the paper. "It's inflamed." Long Fei Yi frowned and looked at her. After looking at her for a long time, he suddenly smiled helplessly. He stroked the corner of her eyes and asked gently, "Silly girl, you're crying, right?" Han Yunshi looked away and didn't answer. "I'm not dead yet, and you're already crying like this. If one day I really..." Before Long Fei Yi could finish speaking, Han Yunshi glared at him fiercely, warning him to shut up. Long Fei Yi continued, "If one day I really die, what will you do?" Han Yunshi stopped writing. She opened her mouth and answered silently, "If you really die, I won't cry anymore." She gritted her teeth as she spoke. Even though she didn't speak, Long Fei Yi could still distinguish every word from the shape of her mouth. "Don't cry?" Long Fei Yi thought about it for a long time and said indifferently, "If you don't cry, then what do you want to do?" Was she going to travel the world with Gu again? "Aren't you afraid that this prince will really break his legs?" Han Yunshi immediately wrote on the paper, "You don't have that ability now." It was rare for Long Fei to get angry at the mention of Gu Qixiao's name. He originally wanted to tease Han Yunshi, but he didn't expect to be teased by her. He really didn't have the ability to break Gu's legs now. He didn't know how long it would take for him to recover from his internal injuries. He only hoped that he could recover before mid-autumn. If Han Yunshi made fun of him, he wouldn't get angry. Instead, he would laugh. Seeing that he could still smile, Han Yunshi felt like she'd lost to him. She looked at him in annoyance, but as she looked, she couldn't help but smile. She hadn't smiled in so many days. "Come over here and let this prince hug you properly. Hurry up." Long Fei Yi was anxious. Han Yunshi immediately leaned over. Afraid that she would hurt him, she put her hands on both sides of him. Who knew that Long Fei Yi would wrap his arms around her and press her down hard? "Do you believe it? These days, I can hear you crying. It's just that you really can't wake up." He suddenly became serious, so serious that Han Yunshi didn't dare to move. Before Han Yunshi could think about his words, he said again, "Han Yunshi, in the future, if I'm not around, don't cry, okay?" He whispered in her ear. His voice was very, very low, but it had an irresistible force. He said, "Wait until I wake up. Wait until I'm around. Then you can cry, okay?" I'll give you my shoulder and let you cry. I'm scared. I'm scared that you'll never be around, Han Yunqi suddenly said. Her voice was very hoarse, and she was choked with sobs. Silly, I haven't married you in a grand sedan chair with 8 people carrying you. I haven't kicked the sedan chair door and carried you in. I haven't bowed to heaven and earth with you. How can I not be around? Long Fei asked this very seriously. Han Yunqi didn't want to cry, but her tears still flowed down uncontrollably. She had never mentioned these things to him, nor did she deliberately remember them. It was just that she couldn't forget them in the end. He had never mentioned them either. She originally thought that he wouldn't care so much, but she didn't expect that he knew what he owed her. He always remembered what he owed her. Okay, I'll remember it all. You must return what you owe me. You're not allowed to go back on your word. Otherwise, I'll marry someone else, she said seriously. As soon as her voice fell, the strength around her waist immediately tightened. It was so tight that she almost couldn't breathe. However, she still stubbornly said, then it's settled. Long Fei Yi would eventually lose if he dared to compete with her. She didn't feel pain, but he would. In the end, he could only helplessly let go. He gently rubbed her throat. Don't talk so much. If your throat is really damaged, I'll be guilty. She laid on top of him. Actually, she still hadn't fully recovered. She didn't know how she got through all these years. Even now, she felt like it was a dream that she had completely lost control of. I'll go get Shirzhen to take a look at your injury. She wanted to get up, but Long Fei Yi didn't let go. Be good. Don't talk. Let Ben Wang hug you for a while. Han Yunqi buried her head in his chest and didn't see the deep guilt in his eyes at this moment. Tenderness couldn't last long. Soon, Elder Kinzo came over. When he saw that Long Fei Yi was awake, he was overjoyed and quickly took his pulse. Han Yunqi wanted to move away, but Long Fei Yi held her hand and didn't let go. Take his pulse, Han Yunqi whispered. Long Fei Yi held her hand with his left hand and extended his right hand to Elder Kinzo. I'm blocking it. Stop fooling around. Han Yunqi reminded him in a low voice. She was so anxious that her ears were burning as she leaned against Elder Kinzo's face. But Long Fei Yi didn't let go. She had no choice but to move aside and sit on the edge of the bed to give Elder Kinzo some space. Elder Kinzo saw all of this, but pretended not to notice a thing. He didn't say a word or smile, but quietly took Long Fei Yi's pulse. You should thank the honored elders for their true qi. Otherwise, you really would have lost your life, Elder Kinzo sighed with emotion. How long do I have to recuperate? Long Fei Yi was only interested in this question. A year of slow, half a year of fast. You won't be able to leave the mountain this autumn, Elder Kinzo replied honestly. Long Fei Yi didn't speak, but Han Yunqi quickly added, your health is important. You need to recuperate for a year. The situation in Northern Li isn't clear yet. If Jun Yixie can bring back his battle horses, then Ning Cheng won't be able to go south. Long Fei Yi nodded and changed the topic. He asked Elder Kinzo, has Song Chiozi been tried yet? He's locked up in jail. Once we interrogate him, the poison sect incident, Elder Kinzo was in a difficult position. Everyone knew about Song Chiozi's scandal, while the poison sect incident was a hot topic. Although there were plenty of rumors at the foot of the mountain, Elder Kinzo hadn't held a trial yet. Thus, there were no final conclusions. The poison sect? Let's not admit it for now, Long Fei Yi said. So many people saw the poison beast that day. How could we not admit it? Han Yunqi retorted. We didn't say we wouldn't admit it, just that we're still investigating. Elder Kinzo chuckled at Long Fei Yi's words. He was all too familiar with the government's evasive tactics. So what if he personally identified Han Yunqi as a poison sect descendant in front of all the disciples of the 2 depositories and courtyards? He hadn't announced it in front of the world, much less made any public announcements. News from the foot of the mountain had spread through small channels. Now that Song Chiozi had been defeated and the 2 depositories and courtyards had surrendered, which celestial mountain disciple would dare to stand out and identify the sect leader as the one who spread the news? In this world, there were many things that everyone knew that would never become reality until the government acknowledged them. Although Han Yunqi detested such evasive tactics, she had to admit that it was an excellent idea. Long Fei had defeated Song Xiuzi and killed Heilian. Then he'd unleashed such a powerful strike that the rebels in Lockhart Courtyard had all withered away. A few days ago, scouts had reported that the heretical sword sect forces at the foot of Celestial Mountain had all retreated as well. By now, Celestial Mountain was stable. However, Long Fei Yi was still injured, while Elder Kinzo had lost all of his internal energy. If anyone found out, the consequences would be unthinkable. Thus, Celestial Mountain's situation was still grim. Long Fei Yi's original plan to take control of the mountain and openly oppose Medical City had to be delayed. Under these circumstances, they couldn't fight head-on against Medical City, so they could only resort to roundabout tactics. They used the excuse of still investigating to buy time for Long Fei Yi to recover and for Gu Beiwei and Bailey Yuanlong to stabilize South Ning's commander-in-chief's estate. As long as Celestial Mountain didn't acknowledge them, Medicine City would have an excuse to supply supplies, and Gu Beiwei would have a reason to shut up the mouths of the clan heads in South Ning's estate. Han Yunxi sighed. At the very least, doctors with a bit of conscience should be able to hold on. The scariest thing about Medical City's ban wasn't Medicine City's lack of medicine, nor would the great clans of South Ning take the chance to strip her of her position as Wang Fei. Instead, it was the fact that all of the medical centers in South Ning would retreat. Seeking medical treatment for illness wasn't the same as eating. You didn't need it every day, but it was just as important. Think about it. If all those doctors withdrew from South Ning, then no one would be able to seek medical treatment for their illnesses. How frightening would that be? Before this, Han Yunxi only knew of Medical City's strength and status in Cloud Realm Continent. But she'd only heard about it from hearsay and had never seen it for herself. She didn't even want to believe it or understand it. Medical City had neither military nor martial prowess, and wasn't even in the top 3 in terms of wealth. Didn't they just control Cloud Realm Continent's medical community? Where did such a high status come from? But now she believed it. An incurable plague could destroy an entire country, or even civilization. Medical City's strength was as frightening as a plague. As far as she knew, the medical community had no borders even in a world war. There would always be doctors from all over the world willing to rush to the battlefield and save the dying and heal the wounded in a hail of bullets. It had to be said that Cloud Realm Continent's medical academy was a marvel of the medical world. Han Yunxi grew curious. Why did the medical academy destroy the poison sect in the past? Just what kind of heinous crimes did the poison sect commit? Or was it just to get rid of dissidents? The Kinzo old man glanced at Long Fei Yi before saying, "Have you heard of the undying and indestructible people?" Chapter 753, Undying and Indestructible People. Long Fei Yi naturally knew of them and had seen them before. Han Yunxi, however, had only heard of them. Supposedly, undying and indestructible people were poison goo humans created through poison nurturing techniques. Like zombies, they looked like normal people, but were undying and indestructible. They wouldn't even age. Is it because of poison goo humans? Han Yunxi asked. Kinzo nodded and began to talk about the history of the Medical Academy and the Poison Sect. The Medical Academy had existed in Cloud Realm Continent for a very long time, even longer than the Great Qin Empire. At first, it was just a school that taught medical skills, but after hundreds of years of growth, it grew into the #1 power in Cloud Realm Continent today. The true rise of the Medical Academy should have come after the Great Qin Empire was destroyed. At the same time, it established a medical association to control all the doctors in the world. Because the Medical Academy was the beginning of Cloud Realm Continent's medical community and the medical sect, most doctors learned their medical skills from there. Thus, the establishment of the association won the support of all doctors without much resistance. After all doctors hoped to gain the protection of the association and rely on its strength to further their medical skills and careers. While the Medical Association provided the doctors with protection, it also had the power to restrain and even control the doctors in the world. Once the association grew strong enough, a single doctor wouldn't be able to contend against it. Once they did, It meant that they'd run into walls everywhere in the industry and be restricted in every way until they couldn't make a living. There were bound to be plenty of doctors who refused to accept the Medical Academy's actions against the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate today, but most of them didn't dare to voice their discontent. That's why it's best for the imperial court to keep control of industries that affect the people's livelihood, such as military equipment, grain, medicine, and irrigation. Otherwise, they'll be blackmailed by these industries sooner or later, Han Yinshi said. She'd understood this principle long ago, but said it especially for Long Fei Ye's benefit. Cloud Realm Continent's commerce was very advanced, but the various countries' imperial courts only controlled the land. They were too lax in many of the key industries. Long Fei Yi glanced at her before nodding thoughtfully. Kinzo admired Han Yunshi even more now. He sighed in his heart. If only this girl wasn't a daughter of the poison sect. He took a sip of tea and continued. The poison sect used to be an important part of the Medical Academy. It was an independent branch of the Medical Academy known as the Poison Doctor and had a long history. The Medical Academy's poison sect was known as Cloud Realm Continents, head of 10,000 poisons. Whether it was Jun Yixie's 100 Poison Sect, the Tang clan's former poison sect branch, or other powers in the poison world, their poison skills all originated from the poison sect. Before the poison sect was founded, the concept of poison in Cloud Realm Continent was limited to snake venom. Even the treatment of snake venom was considered ordinary. Medicine and poison were one and the same. It was precisely because medical doctors found more and more fatal cases of accidental ingestion of poisonous herbs in the process of medical practice that the medical school began to research poisonous herbs and began to develop the concept of poison. Gradually, doctors discovered that many medicinal herbs contained a certain amount of toxins. If they were not used properly or matched properly, it would cause the human body to show signs of being poisoned. It could even be fatal. Other than medicinal herbs, there were also some unknown plants that had no medicinal value but were highly toxic. Not only poisonous snakes, but many animals also carried a certain amount of toxins. Thus, the Medical Academy established its own independent school of thought and called it the Poison Sect. It organized a group of doctors to specialize in the study of poisons. Once the Poison Sect was established, the Medical Academy split into two factions, the Medical Sect and the Poison Sect. But any method that could save lives could also harm others. Doctors were the most frightening killers in the world, and poison doctors were even more so. The Poison Sect's poison skills started out as detoxification techniques that specialized in treating poisoned people. The Poison Sect had strict prohibitions that forbade any poison master from using poisons for any reason except for the research and development of antidotes. But no matter how strict the prohibitions were, there were still people who disobeyed them. As the study of poisons developed, more and more poisons were recorded in the books. Gradually, outside powers began to infiltrate the market and tempt poison masters with all sorts of conditions to buy ready-made poisons and even their prescriptions. Humans died for wealth and birds died for food. No matter how strict the prohibitions were, it was impossible to resist the temptation for everyone. Less than a decade after the Poison Sect's establishment, the number of poisoned people in Cloud Realm Continent each year was already skyrocketing. Thus, the Poison Sect began to investigate the spread of poisons and ferret out many poison doctors to execute as a warning to others. However, the Medical Sect was wary of the Poison Sect's growing power and seized the opportunity to slander the Poison Sect everywhere. In less than 5 years, the Poison Sect and the Medical Academy were like fire and water. Because the Medical Sect controlled most of the Medical Academy's power, the Poison Sect secretly launched a poison nurturing plan in self-defense. At this point, Han Yunshi hurriedly asked, "Is this the poison nurturing art of today's poison world?" Exactly. The poison nurturing art that many people in today's poison world know originated from the Poison Sect. Kinzo nodded and continued. The poison nurturing art is divided into 3 realms: poison humans, poison corpses, and poison goo. Poison humans are the most common and are no different from normal people, but their lifespans are limited and they have some resistance to low-level poisons. Poison corpses are similar to death warriors and have some resistance to mid-level poisons. As for poison goo, Han Yunxi grew a little agitated at this point in Kinzo's explanation. She had studied poison humans and poison corpses in the ancient texts, but she couldn't find any information on poison goo. Everything about poison goo seemed to have been purposely erased by the predecessors, leaving behind only fragmented details. From what I know, there are 3 types of poison goo: grass, insects, and humans, Han Yunxi said seriously. That's right. The sword sect master nodded and said with a smile, "Little girl, you're actually studying the poison goo arts as well. How much have you grasped now?" "Not a single thing. I only found out last year that I was a descendant of the poison sect." Han Yunxi glanced at Long Fei Yi. After getting his permission, she told Kinzo about her background, including the Mu clan in Medicine City. "So you don't know who your father is?" Kinzo was surprised. He thought that Long Fei Yi had colluded with all of the poison sect's remnants. Han Yunxi didn't want to talk about this. She was more interested in poison goo, so she retorted, "If I don't study it, how can I cure poison goo?" Kinzo was shocked. "What? Someone's been poisoned by goo today?" Han Yunxi told Kinzo about how Long Tianma's stomach had swelled up for no reason. Long Tianma's stomach had swelled up because of Shi Yuba's poison goo. Later, Long Tianma ended up in Jun Yixie's hands. Jun Yixie cured the goo, then poisoned Long Tianma to slander her. This incident had caused quite a stir in the medical academy, but the real reason for Long Tianma's swollen stomach hadn't been made public. However, Long Tianma's strange illness had flared up again. It could be deduced that Shi Yuba, Luo Zuishan, and Jun Yixie all knew poison goo. In truth, Han Yunxi wasn't completely aware of the truth behind Long Tianma's strange illness. However, Long Fei Yi knew full well. Long Tianma's strange illness had flared up all those years ago because of the white-robed man, Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei was the one who taught Shi Yuba how to plant goo. Gu Beiwei had used poison goo on Long Tianma for 2 reasons. 1, to confirm Gu's identity, and 2, to lure Han Yunxi to the poison sect Sky Pit. Luo Zuishan didn't actually know poison goo, but he was one of Gu's men. Thus, Gu had told Luo Zuishan the truth behind Long Tianma's illness so that Luo Zuishan could contend against Shi Yuba. He wanted to expose Shi Yuba in a public setting like this and bring shame to the medical academy. Unfortunately, Jun Yixie had interfered and ruined Gu's plans. Even so, Gu Beiwei had still lured Gu to Medical City and confirmed that Gu was Medical City's ghost genius, Shaoqi. The Medical Academy had been interrogating Shi Yuba and investigating Jun Yixie all these years, but they'd never suspected that Gu Beiwei and Gu were the 2 instigators. Long Fei didn't speak from beginning to end. "I didn't expect so many people to know about poison goo. It looks like Medical Sect didn't completely exterminate the poison sect back then." Kinzo sighed with emotion. "What happened back then?" Han Yunxi asked. "Medical City exterminated the poison sect because of the poison goo technique. The highest level of the poison goo technique involves using humans as goo to raise poison goo humans who won't age, die, or die." As soon as Kinzo finished speaking, Han Yunxi anxiously asked, "Did they succeed?" Long Fei Yi was also curious about this matter. He knew that Gu had an undying and indestructible body, but he didn't know if he was immortal or not. Long Fei Yi didn't know the real reason why Gu had been expelled from Medical City when he was very young, or when he gained an undying and indestructible body. No, Kinzo was very certain. Using humans as Gu was nothing more than a hypothesis. There weren't even any poison goo recipes or poison goo techniques. There were only grass goo and insect goo. Moreover, Medical Sect destroyed the poison sect back then and destroyed all records related to the poison goo technique. Han Yunxi furrowed her brows. So the poison sect didn't do anything outrageous, and the Medical Sect destroyed them just because of a hypothesis? It was only now that Kinzo realized that Han Yunxi was a descendant of the poison sect. Before this, he'd almost forgotten that this girl was a member of the poison sect. She really sounded like an outsider when she talked about the poison sect. After all, anyone who could make the poison beast submit had to be a direct descendant of the poison sect. No matter what, they were still connected by blood. Kinzo couldn't understand why Han Yunxi was so cold to the poison sect. This noble one only knows the rough details. As for how the medical sect destroyed the poison sect, how many people they killed, and how many orphans escaped, I'm afraid only the medical academy knows. Kinzo said indifferently. After the poison sect was destroyed, the medical sect took control of Medical City and the medical academy. One day, we'll get to the bottom of this. Han Yunxi's eyes shone with hatred. Kinzo and Long Fei Yi both assumed that she wanted to avenge the poison sect as a descendant of the poison sect, who knew that she was a transmigrator and had no blood ties with the poison sect. What she was truly dissatisfied with was the medical sect's selfishness. Kinzo didn't chat any longer, but immediately arranged for a few disciples from the abstinence courtyard to treat Long Fei Yi's wounds. That very day, he announced that he'd pass on his position to Long Fei Yi within the next 3 months. Then he put Song Qiuzi on trial. Song Qiuzi was stripped of his position as an elder and head of the courtyard. His martial arts were crippled, and he was locked up in Celestial Prison. Long Fei Yi had left him with his last breath and crippled his martial arts. Even if he didn't die, he was probably at death's door. Granny Yu was temporarily the head of Lockhart Courtyard. Everyone guessed that Long Fei Yi would choose a new head of Lockhart Courtyard after he took over the position. Thus, all of the branch factions were very loyal to him. Everything seemed to be getting better until that very night. Su Donglin suddenly barged in with an urgent secret missive in both hands. Master, this subordinate deserves to die. This missive arrived 8 or 9 days ago. Chapter 754. An urgent letter that was sent 8 or 9 days ago. And it was especially urgent? Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi looked at each other in dismay. They were both very uneasy. Ever since they came to Tianshan Mountain, the Commander-in-Chief's office in Zhongnan had only sent urgent letters. There had never been an especially urgent letter. What on earth had happened? In this kind of special period, even if it wasn't urgent, the consequences of delaying it for 8 or 9 days was unimaginable, let alone an especially urgent letter. Su Donglin's expression was very ugly. He had completely forgotten about this matter. If it wasn't for another urgent letter today, he wouldn't have remembered it. Long Fei Yi's face paled when he read the contents of the letter. He looked at Han Yunxi in shock. Gu Beiwei. Han Yunxi was shocked. What's wrong? He's been poisoned. He can't stand up even now. Long Fei Yi said truthfully. What? Han Yunxi couldn't believe her ears. She hurriedly took the letter from Long Fei Yi and read it. Long Fei Yi wasn't lying. The letter described Gu Beiwei's poisoning. The symptoms of the poisoning were written clearly. Mu Ling wrote a letter to ask for medicine and a poison doctor to treat him. Han Yunxi seriously read the description of the poisoning symptoms in the letter word by word. Her hands went limp, and the letter slowly fell to the ground. Zombie ginseng? Long Fei Yi asked anxiously. The letter described this poison. Han Yunxi looked at him and didn't say anything for a long time. Her back was already drenched in cold sweat. Long Fei Yi and Su Donglin didn't know what zombie ginseng was, but Kinzo knew. He was very shocked. Is it really zombie ginseng? Does such a thing really exist? The diagnosis was made by the people in Medicine Ghost Valley. It shouldn't be wrong, Han Yunxi murmured. The letter explained the situation in detail. Gu Beiwei's legs had recovered, and he could walk freely. However, because of the poison, his legs seemed to be anesthetized, and he lost feeling again. Mu Linger immediately thought of Gu, but unfortunately, she couldn't find him. She had no choice but to invite the old housekeeper of the Medicine Ghost Valley. The old housekeeper confirmed that Gu Beiwei was poisoned by the very rare corpse ginseng. The so-called corpse ginseng was a poisonous herb. It was a ginseng plant that grew near graves. Its shape was very similar to ginseng, but it was much bigger than ginseng. This kind of poisonous grass grew in dark and rancid soil. Tombs that were invaded by moisture were the most suitable environment for them to grow. This thing was both medicine and poison. It was called medicine because it had an anesthetic effect. Han Yinshi remembered that she had read about it in ancient books. Divine Doctor Hua Tuo had used it as an anesthetic. It was called poison because if a certain amount of it was placed in wine, it would cause paralysis all over the body. The person would lose all feeling in their limbs, and they would become half dead until they died completely. Han Yinshi's heart was in a mess. She didn't have time to think about how Gu Beiwei was only poisoned in his legs. The poisoning in his legs was considered a local poisoning. After a long time, the poison would spread to the whole body. This poison is highly toxic. It has been 8 or 9 days. I'm afraid it's not good, Kinzo said seriously. Han Yinshi looked at Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi was also looking at her. Both of them were stiff and motionless. They only looked at each other with fear and uneasiness. Although Han Yinshi didn't want to accept what the old Kinzo said, she had to admit that the old Kinzo was right. Corpse ginseng was highly toxic. If it was a local poisoning, it would only take a day for the poison to spread to the whole body. It had been 8 or 9 days. Gu Beiwei wasn't just not good. He was definitely dead. Kinzo's eyes flashed with a complicated look. He didn't say anything else. The room suddenly quieted down, and the air seemed to have frozen. Long Fei Ye's face was very pale. Han Yinshi lowered her head to read the letter in a low voice. It was so quiet that it made people feel uneasy. Su Donglin was so frightened that his body didn't listen to him. He couldn't move. After a while, he could barely move. He trembled as he handed over the letter and stammered, "Master, this was just delivered." When he said this, everyone looked over. Long Fei Yi scolded coldly. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" Su Donglin didn't dare to say a word. He presented the letter to Long Fei Yi with trembling hands. Long Fei Yi was calm. He opened the letter and asked, "Is there more?" No. Just these two, too." Su Donglin's teeth kept chattering. Gu Beiwei had been poisoned 8 or 9 days ago. He had sent a letter asking for help. Why hadn't there been a single letter during this period? Could it be that he couldn't be saved? The other side didn't dare to report it until today. Han Yinshi didn't dare to think further. She looked at the letter in Long Fei Ye's hand and prayed in her heart that it wasn't bad news. This was the first time she realized that she was so easily frightened. She had been frightened by Long Fei Yi for the past few days. She couldn't take any more shocks. She prayed inwardly, but she couldn't wait any longer. When Long Fei Yi opened the letter, she asked, "What does it say?" "Gu Beiwei." Long Fei Yi looked at her and exhaled. "He can still be saved, right? He's still alive, right?" Han Yinshi asked anxiously. "He's still alive. The poison only started spreading last night." Long Fei Yi sighed in relief. Even he didn't understand why he couldn't bear to see Gu Beiwei, the Shadow Clan's orphan. Han Yinshi's heart finally settled back into her chest. She was so moved that she wanted to cry. Of course, she didn't have time to cry, much less rejoice. She immediately took the letter in Long Fei Ye's hand and found that it was written this morning. It explained Gu Beiwei's current situation in detail. Because they hadn't received a reply, Mu Linger went to look for Bailey Yuanlong. They didn't know the situation on Celestial Mountain, so they didn't dare to rashly send another letter. Gu Beiwei's poison had been sealed in his leg with acupuncture. In addition, the Medicine Ghost Valley had provided him with some medicine to temporarily slow down the poison's outbreak. That was why he had been able to drag it out for so many days. But since last night, the poison couldn't be sealed and was showing signs of moving to his upper body. Gu Beiwei was worried that something would happen on Celestial Mountain, so he didn't allow Mu Linger to send another letter to urge him. This letter was secretly delivered by Mu Linger. Idiot! Han Yinshi was worried and angry. He's a doctor. He's simply courting death. The corpse ginseng's poison didn't just spread from the wound to the entire body. There was also a terrifying phenomenon. Once the corpse ginseng's poison stayed in the human body for a long time without being expelled or erupting, the poison would treat the human body as soil and grow the corpse ginseng in the organs. In the end, even if the person died, the corpse would be taken over by the corpse ginseng. If they had used the antidote from the start, they could have completely cured the corpse ginseng's poison. But now, the antidote wouldn't be able to completely remove the poison. They had to find blood and use needles to expel the poison. Han Yunxi didn't dare delay. She immediately took out the antidote from the detoxification system and wrote a letter for Su Donglin to send back immediately. As soon as Su Donglin left, before Han Yunxi could speak, Long Feiyi asked, "Do you really have to go down the mountains?" Before coming up the mountain, he had made all sorts of preparations for her to leave. But he hadn't expected that he would be so reluctant and worried when she really needed to leave. Even if Celestial Mountain hadn't given the Medical Academy an official reply, the entire world knew that she was a descendant of the poison sect. Once she left the mountain, how much blame and rejection would she face? How much trouble and danger would she have to face? The antidote can remove 70% of the poison. But if the remaining 30% isn't expelled, it'll definitely gather in his organs in less than half a month and grow corpse poison grass, Han Yunxi said mildly. If I don't leave the mountain, he'll die. Long Fei had just woken up from his serious injuries and was too weak to leave the bed. How could Han Yunxi bear to leave? How could she not worry? But this was a matter of life and death. She had to be cruel to Long Fei and herself. Gu Beiwei was her best friend. How could she leave him in the lurch? Moreover, it wasn't easy to get poisoned by corpse ginseng. She suspected that there was a spy by Gu Beiyue's side. Third, Bailey Yuanlong was a military general and didn't know how to play politics. Long Fei had been away from her for so long, but Gu Beiwei had been supporting Bailey Yuanlong from the back. Especially now that her identity as a poison sect disciple had been exposed, it was Gu Beiwei who had turned the tide and stabilized the situation. If anything happened to Gu Beiwei, Long Fei's current situation would cause internal strife in the south-central region. Whether it was for public or private reasons, Han Yunxi had to leave the mountain as soon as possible to save him. Long Fei knew these complicated relationships better than Han Yunxi did. He hid his reluctance in his heart and said calmly without hesitation, "I'll immediately arrange for you to leave the mountain in secret. Tell the outside world that Celestial Mountain is still investigating you and won't let you leave until the matter is clear." "All right." Han Yunxi hesitated. "There's only one way down the mountain, and you'll leave tonight. Have the shadow guard pick you up at the foot of the mountain," Long Fei said. Han Yunxi was very obedient. The two looked at each other and didn't say anything else. When night fell, Han Yunxi packed her things. Before she left, she said to Long Fei, "Recuperate well. Once the poison is cured, I'll be back." Long Fei was very obedient. Han Yunxi was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm leaving, so you don't have to send me off. Wait for me to come back. Can you pick me up at the foot of the mountain?" Long Fei didn't reply immediately. He stared at her for a long time before finally replying, "All right, then I'm leaving," Han Yunxi said. The old Kenzo and Su Donglin had been waiting outside for a long time. Long Fei nodded. Han Yunxi looked like she still wanted to say something, but in the end, she bit her lip and turned to leave. Just as she reached the door, Long Fei called out, "Han Yunxi." Han Yunxi immediately stopped, but she didn't turn back. She waited for a long time, but Long Fei didn't say anything. Finally, she turned back. "Is there anything else?" He smiled. "Why don't this prince go down the mountain with you?" She smiled back. "Sure, then I'll help you pack up. Let's go together." "Okay," he agreed happily. However, she didn't move. They both knew that this was just a joke. He had to recuperate, so he couldn't go down the mountain. Long Fei goodbye. Han Yunxi became serious. Long Fei didn't say anything. He waved his hand, indicating for her to leave quickly. This time, Han Yunxi didn't turn back and Long Fei didn't ask her to stay either. Creak. The door closed, and the two of them couldn't see each other again. They were separated by life and death, and they didn't even have time to say a few words. How could they be separated so quickly? Han Yunxi's clear eyes glistened with tears under the moonlight. "Shirzun, let's go." Under the old Kenzo S arrangements, several imperial bodyguards and Su Donglin escorted Han Yunxi down the mountain secretly. However, she didn't expect that there was a group of people waiting for her at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 755. Han Yunxi was planning to leave Celestial Mountain in secret, but ran into a group of Jianghu men as soon as she reached the foot of the mountain. It wasn't clear whether they were here every day or had received news of her arrival and came to intercept her. It wasn't convenient for the guards to act, but Long Fei Yi had arranged for enough shadow guard to protect her. Soon enough, they killed off all but one of them to be sent up the mountain for interrogation. Once that was done, old Kinzo emerged from his hiding place and said, "Lass, it looks like you'll run into a lot of trouble on your way back. I'll have to trouble you. It's my own business to begin with, so there's no trouble at all," Han Yunxi said simply. All of this trouble had come because of her identity. If it wasn't for old man, Kinzo felt guilty. If he hadn't ignored Song Chiozi all these years, perhaps none of this would have happened. Celestial Mountain is the head of the martial arts circles. It's only right and proper for them to kill the remnants of the poison sect. Yunxi still has to thank Master for protecting me, Han Yunxi said. I can only blame my poison sect for being useless and being framed for nothing all these years. Since I'm a descendant of the poison sect, one day I'll demand an explanation from the medical academy. Old Kinzo looked at Han Yunxi's stubborn gaze and couldn't help but admire her again. This girl was now the target of all of Cloud Realm Continent. She was a remnant of the poison sect that everyone wanted to kill. If she'd run into trouble at the foot of Celestial Mountain, how much more trouble would there be outside? How much more danger and humiliation would there be on her way back to South Ning? Even when the entire world was her enemy, she still had such unwavering faith and the courage to denounce the medical academy. Even if it was a man, he might not have her bearing and courage. All right, this Grandmaster will do his best to delay the medical academy for you. Old Kinzo was throwing caution to the wind. Academy head Gu had already sent him 3 letters asking about Han Yunxi's identity, but he still hadn't replied to a single one. Many thanks. Han Yunxi cupped her fists and prepared to leave when the Kinzo man spoke up again. Fei He. Before Kinzo could finish, Han Yunxi interrupted. Shizun, please take good care of him and let him recuperate. Don't leave the mountain early. Han Yunxi paused for a while and said, help me pass a message to him. Just say. Actually, there were a lot of things he wanted to say, but he couldn't say them in front of Long Fei Yi and Kinzo. In the end, he only said, don't worry. The old Kinzo glanced at the bushes beside him and smiled helplessly. All right, I will definitely bring them there. Goodbye. Han Yunxi looked back at the mountain. Unfortunately, she couldn't see anything except for the stars in the sky. No matter how much he lingered, he would have to leave eventually. She firmly believed that today's parting was for a better reunion in the future. She silently said goodbye to Long Fei Yi in her heart and quickly boarded the carriage to leave. For the sake of concealing her identity, the carriage was simple and low-key. It was only big enough for Han Yunxi, so Su Donglin disguised himself and drove the carriage himself. A large group of shadow guard followed him from the shadows. Once the carriage had completely vanished from sight, Long Fei Yi walked out of the woods step by step. Using his sword as a walking stick, each step took a lot of effort. He stared in the direction of the carriage as he bid farewell to Han Yunxi in his heart. He shouldn't have been able to get off the bed, much less leave the mountain. Unfortunately, the old Kinzo man couldn't persuade or stop him. The old Kinzo man rushed over to support him. You didn't let her know you were coming, nor did you send her off. What's the point of this? The carriage had already disappeared, but Long Fei Yi was still looking into the distance. He lightly said, I know, but I still have to leave. Then why did you send her off? The old Kinzo man was angry. Long Fei Yi went down the mountain. How much true chi did he use? I just left the mountain, and I'm already surrounded. It seems like that person from 9 Mystical Palace knows everything. Long Fei Yi coldly said. The old Kinzo man's eyes were gloomy. He never thought that there would be a spy by his side. He was really too muddle-headed these past few years. If Long Fei hadn't defeated He Ilian and learned of this news, he would probably never have known. That day, He Ilian didn't tell Long Fei who'd instructed him to stall for time, but he did provide Long Fei with an extremely important clue. He Ilian had said, "There's a spy in Nine Xian Palace. They've even reached out to Celestial Mountain. It seems like the old fox behind the scenes has been watching you for a long time," the old Kinzo man said seriously. Long Fei denied it. No, he's probably been watching Cloud Realm for a long time. What was the use of watching him? The only reason he was watching him was because he wanted to compete with him for Cloud Realm's territory. His hands not only reached Celestial Mountain, but also the Duke of Qin's manor, Long Fei said. This prince will make him pay the price for messing up my plans. He didn't pay much attention to Su Xiaoyu's disappearance. It wasn't because he was too busy with Celestial Mountain's affairs, but because he already knew. After Su Xiaoyu lost her memories, she continued to stay by Han Yunqi's side. He had always sent people to keep an eye on Su Xiaoyu's whereabouts. No matter what, South Ning Prefecture was still his territory. It wasn't easy to lose a person. He was only using Su Xiaoyu as bait to beat her at her own game. He hadn't told Han Yunqi the truth because he was worried that Han Yunqi wouldn't bear to part with Su Xiaoyu. Su Xiaoyu would suffer if she fell into those people's hands. It was hard to say whether she could even keep her life. Gu Beiyue's poisoning probably has something to do with that old fox as well, the old Kinzo man murmured. Yunqi's trip this time was dangerous. Your heart is even more ruthless than Master's, Long Fei didn't reply. Actually, if he could keep Han Yunqi, he would definitely do so. He'd rather have South Ning's commander-in-chief's estate fall into chaos than let Han Yunqi take the risk. Nor did he want Han Yunqi to face the world's curses alone. But even if he told Han Yunqi the truth, that woman would still fearlessly return to South Ning. It wasn't that he didn't want to stop her, or that he was willing or heartless, but that he couldn't keep her. In the end, Han Yunqi was different from other women. She wasn't afraid of trouble, much less hiding behind a man's back to avoid storms. Almost all of his shadow guards were sent to protect Han Yunqi. At the same time, he kept an eye on Lockhart Courtyard, Sword Depository, and Scripture Depository. As long as those three didn't make a move, no one in the world would be able to oppose the shadow guards he'd sent this time. He only hoped that her journey would be smooth. At this moment, a white-haired, honored elder emerged from the shadows to urge Long Fei to return. He was here to help Long Fei control the lustbite energy. Fei, have you forgotten the taboo of the lustbite energy? The honored elder cold asked. Long Fei and Elder Kinzo didn't understand the lustbite energy, but the honored elder had discovered it while treating Long Fei's injuries. The honored elder's understanding of the lustbite energy far exceeded theirs. The lustbite seal's greatest taboo was the word desire. Thus, before the seal was lifted and the user could control the energy, all their previous efforts would be wasted if they lost their virginity. Meanwhile, the lustbite seal's greatest taboo was the word affection. The lustbite energy was the highest level of martial arts in Cloud Realm Continent. Once one mastered it, they would be invincible in the martial arts circles. But when faced with a loved one, the lustbite energy would be completely suppressed. In other words, if Han Yunqi faced him with a sword one day, he would lose all of his internal energy in front of Han Yunqi. The so-called lustbite meant that emotions could devour a person. In other words, if someone wanted to kill him, the best way wasn't to face him with a sword, but to borrow Han Yunqi's hand. I remember. Long Fei replied to the honored elder seriously. Because of this taboo, he was afraid that he would have to rein in his love for Han Yunqi. The old fox behind He Ilian must know something to let He Ilian stall for time. If by any chance that old fox understood the lustbite energy as well, then Han Yunqi would be in even more trouble. Long Fei looked into the distance again before suppressing his worries and returning to the mountain with the honored elder. This night was especially long. Han Yunqi sat in the carriage. Although she kept telling herself to use this free time to cultivate and familiarize herself with the second level of the poison storage space, she couldn't calm down. She couldn't help but wonder what Long Fei was doing. Was there an antidote in the world that could cure the lovesickness poison? At least, Han Yunshi wouldn't be able to develop one. However, she didn't have time to think about the lovesickness anymore. Because, the moment they left Tianshan, before the sun had even risen, she ran into trouble again. A large group of righteous sects suddenly appeared and surrounded the carriage tightly. The news spread so quickly. Looks like we can't hide our whereabouts anymore. Han Yunshi said softly, "Master, you can continue to rest. It's not a big deal." Su Donglin said seriously. He sat in the carriage without moving, allowing the accompanying shadow guard to deal with those so-called righteous sects. The shadow guard that Long Fei Yi selected to protect them were naturally the best of the best. One of them was enough to fight against 10 people. Very quickly, the group of people was wiped out. The shadow guard wanted to silence them, but Han Yunshi stopped him. "In any case, we can't hide our whereabouts anymore. Let's just spare their lives so that people won't gossip." Only the heavens knew how many more people she would encounter along the way. If she killed all of them, the medical academy would definitely make a big fuss about it. Even if we don't kill them, we still have to teach them a lesson. We have to let them know that we're not easy to bully. Su Donglin said as he drove the carriage over a pile of injured people. As expected, the news spread very quickly. Han Yunshi and the others had been on the road for 3 days, but they had already been ambushed and attacked 20 times. Almost every 4 hours, they would be ambushed and attacked once. She could recite all the curses that were thrown at her. They were nothing more than witch, disaster, scourge, hypocrite, and so on. They said that she had an ulterior motive for opening Pill Fiend Pharmacy, and that she had used bewitching techniques to gain the favor of the King of Medicine. If it weren't for the fact that Long Fei Yi's shadow guard was strong enough, Han Yunshi would have been killed by his sword a long time ago. If it weren't for the fact that Han Yunshi's mind was strong enough, she would have been drowned by the spit of those righteous warriors. Everything was going smoothly. However, on the morning of the 5th day, they were surrounded by the people of Liberty City. Unexpectedly, Liberty City had turned out in full force. Chapter 756. More than 50 shadow guards surrounded a simple and crude carriage. Each of them held a long sword in their hands and were on high alert. This time, Su Donglin couldn't comfort Han Yunshi anymore. Even he himself was pale with fright. Carefree City had come out in full force. This was too unexpected. The shadow guard surrounded them 3 times in a tight circle. The people of Carefree City were right in front of them. There were 3 rows of people, and the first row was made up of Carefree City's elders and a few of their sons who were skilled in martial arts. Su Donglin had seen all of them in the City of Daughters last time, but there was one person he didn't recognize. That person was in his early 50s. He held a double-edged sword in his hand and had a full beard. His eyes were cold and stern, and he exuded an imposing aura. He stood there like a ferocious god. Even Han Yunshi, who didn't know martial arts, could clearly sense his killing intent. "Mistress, he is he," Su Donglin stammered. Han Yunshi was relatively calm. She said, "He should be Carefree City's city lord, Qi Zonglin. He's ranked 4th in Cloud Realm Continent, second only to Tang Zijin." Han Yunshi laughed at herself. "I didn't expect him to come. This princess's life is really valuable." "Mistress, we can't beat them." Su Donglin wasn't belittling himself, nor was he trying to boost their morale. He was speaking the truth. "We really can't beat them." Han Yunshi was calm, but a chill ran down her spine. Qi Zonglin alone was enough to deal with more than 50 shadow guard, to say nothing of the others. Just how determined was he to kill her? "Mistress, could it be that Medical City hired them?" Su Donglin guessed. Han Yunshi immediately rejected the idea. The City of Daughters and Carefree City didn't have good reputations. Medical City wouldn't be stupid enough to openly hire assassins to kill her, a descendant of the poison sect. That was because such a method would definitely cause people to gossip. Also, Long Fei Ye's killing of Lady Lung Yu was enough to intimidate Liberty City. It was unlikely that Qi Zonglin would come out to kill her, just because of the commission. Without enough temptation, Qi Zonglin would not act rashly, because he could not afford to offend Long Fei Yi, let alone Sky Mountain. There must be something fishy behind this. If he doesn't have an ulterior motive, then he must have gotten some information, Han Yinshi guessed. Master, no matter what his purpose is, let's think about how to save our lives first. When the fight starts, I'll take you away. There's a fork in the road about 1 li ahead. Let's split up. Su Donglin was very serious. Master, you have to remember this. You go to the right, and I'll go to the left. I'll try to lure them away. Don't worry about anything. Just keep running forward and find a place to hide. Han Yinshi smiled helplessly. Su Donglin, do you think we can escape in this situation? Su Donglin looked into her eyes, persistent and sincere. Master, we have to run even if we can't. Even if we have to risk our lives, we'll buy you time. Please believe us. Han Yinshi's heart ached for the Shadow Guard, but it was worth it. A complicated look flitted through her eyes as she said, I don't want to run, and I don't want to die. I'll do my best to buy time. Hurry and contact Sky Mountain's people and have them send reinforcements. They had already entered Western Zhou's borders. Western Zhou had yet to express their stance on the matter of the poison sex remnants, but Western Zhou's imperial family would never help them. Long Fei Ye's forces in Western Zhou were mostly in the capital, which was more than 10 days' journey away. Thus, her only choice was to turn back and ask for reinforcements from Sky Mountain. It was only 5 days' journey from here to Sky Mountain. With Su Donglin's Qinggong, he could cover the 2-day journey in half a day if he tried his best. He didn't need to go to Sky Mountain himself. All he had to do was send out a distress signal, and reinforcements would definitely come. Han Yinshi didn't know how long she could stall for, but she had to do her best no matter what. She had to survive. Gu Beiwei was still waiting for her to save him. Long Fei Yi was still waiting for her to return. Her life was very precious. From a distance, the two forces looked like they were about to break out into a fight. Han Yinshi walked out of the heavy protection to face the people of Carefree City. Her appearance attracted the attention of everyone in Carefree City. Su Donglin used this opportunity to slip away from the back. I presume this must be the famous Qin Wangfei? Han Yinshi? Qi Zonglin was surprised. I presume this distinguished one must be the 4th strongest expert of the martial arts circles, the City Lord of Carefree City, City Lord Qi. It's an honor to meet you at last. Han Yinshi was very polite. But Qi Zonglin was no longer polite. Cold, he said, since you know who the old man is, then why don't you surrender yourself before the old man makes a move? Yinshi wants to know the reason for her death. I wonder who wants to buy Yinshi's life? Han Yinshi asked modestly. Qi Zonglin said seriously, this time, Carefree City is enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens and the people of the world. We won't take a single cent. Han Yinshi finally laughed, but it was a cold, mocking laugh. What are you laughing at? Qi Zonglin asked. City Lord Qi, when did you start enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens? What? Has Carefree City been frightened by the Duke of Qin? Are you so eager to curry favor with those righteous sects? Why stick your warm face to someone's cold butt? Han Yinshi guffawed. You're still so stubborn even in the face of death. This city lord would like to see how long you can keep laughing. Qi Zonglin was furious. He was about to make a move himself when Han Yinshi turned serious and asked loudly, Qi Zonglin, who told you that this Wang Fei is a descendant of the poison sect? Qi Zonglin never expected Han Yinshi to ask such a question. A complicated look flitted past his eyes, but he quickly replied, only the direct bloodline of the poison sect can control the poison beast. Han Yinshi, your identity hasn't been a secret for a long time. Old man advises you to be tactful and surrender yourself. Poison beast? Dare I ask City Lord Qi, which eye of yours saw the poison beast? Han Yinshi asked again. Qi Zonglin naturally hadn't seen the poison beast with his own eyes, but he was certain. The disciples of Celestial Mountain's 2 pavilions and courtyards all saw it with their own eyes. Could it be false? Celestial Mountain disciples? Han Yunxi shook her head helplessly. Then may I ask which disciples saw it with their own eyes? Also, when did Celestial Mountain step out to accuse this Wang Fei of being a descendant of the poison sect? Qi Zonglin had no answer. Han Yunxi's identity had never been officially acknowledged aside from rumors. Even Medical City's sanctions against the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's manor had only been to hand it over to Han Yunxi and cooperate with Medical City's investigation. They hadn't explicitly stated Han Yunxi's identity. Qi Zonglin had only dared to block Han Yunxi's path this time because he'd received pointers from an expert. That expert had told him that Long Fei Ye's internal injuries were extremely severe and wouldn't recover in a short time. Han Yunxi would leave Celestial Mountain on her own and return to South Ning. He hadn't believed it at first, but that expert had actually described the time and route Han Yunxi would take when she left Celestial Mountain. Qi Zonglin had sent people to investigate, and the results were accurate. No matter how stupid Qi Zonglin was, he knew that the expert was someone from Celestial Mountain, so he believed him. Carefree City and Han Yunxi had an old grudge to begin with. After being threatened by Long Fei Yi, Qi Zonglin had long been dissatisfied. How could the assassin's world be trampled underfoot by Long Fei Yi and his wife? Qi Zonglin wanted revenge and to vent his resentment. That was why he'd come out with all his might today. He wanted this matter to shake Cloud Realm Continent and let the entire world know that Carefree City wasn't to be trifled with. Of course, Qi Zonglin was also certain that Long Fei Yi wouldn't travel with them due to his injuries. That was why he dared to block their path. Han Yunxi's words now made him uneasy. Seeing Qi Zonglin waver, Han Yunxi hurriedly added, "City Lord Qi, I won't hide it from you. I came down the mountain this time precisely because I wanted to go to Medical City with Master Kenzo and His Highness Duke of Qin to explain the poison sect. They've been delayed by other matters, so I'm sure they'll be here soon." Oh, that's right. Kenzo's master will bring a few more disciples over in a moment. I'll have to ask City Lord Qi to help me identify which disciple leaked this Princess Consort's whereabouts. Han Yunxi spouted this monumental lie very calmly and easily. She'd long guessed that there were spies in Celestial Mountain. She'd also guessed that Carefree City had come out with all their might to block her path because they'd received some sort of information. Otherwise, Qi Zonglin wouldn't have had the guts. That was why she'd hardened her heart and taken a gamble. Qi Zonglin's heart grew alarmed at Han Yunxi's words. He wondered if that expert had been discovered, so Long Fei Yi had decided to beat him at his own game and lure him out. He didn't speak. Cold eyes sized up Han Yunxi. This woman didn't look like she was lying at all. Her words could be false, but her eyes couldn't be. There wasn't the slightest fear in this woman's eyes when she was faced with the assassins of Carefree City. How could she be so fearless if she wasn't confident? Even a man would be scared when faced with such a situation, let alone a woman. Han Yunxi's entire back was soaked in sweat when she was faced with Qi Zonglin's sharp gaze. Nobody knew how scared she was in her heart. If anything went wrong, if Qi Zonglin willed it and Carefree City took action, she would be dead for sure. However, she still held on. She looked down at Qi Zonglin's sharp gaze from high above. She was calm and fearless like a queen. Qi Zonglin was hesitating. Han Yunxi was about to continue her threats when a figure suddenly flew over from behind them and was thrown to the ground heavily. "Su Donglin!" Han Yunxi shouted. Su Donglin was thrown to the ground. He was vomiting blood and dying. The shadow guard next to Han Yunxi was about to rescue him when a figure suddenly flew over. It was none other than Qi Yaotian, the young master of Carefree City. He stepped on Su Donglin and shouted, "Father, don't be fooled by this woman. She was stalling you while she sent someone to call for reinforcements. Long Fei Yi and Kenzo didn't follow her at all. Let go of him." Han Yunxi was infuriated. Hardly had she finished her sentence when she shot out several gold needles. Qi Yaotian was caught off guard and could only retreat. The shadow guard then took the opportunity to rescue Su Donglin. Han Yunxi had barely supported Su Donglin when Qi Zonglin had already drawn his sword. More than 50 shadow guards charged forward together. Han Yunxi supported Su Donglin and retreated to the back. The other people of Carefree City began to disperse and surround Han Yunxi and the rest of them. Qi Zonglin, on the other hand, was fighting 50 people alone. The battle began. The shadow guards fell one after another in the blink of an eye, and Qi Zonglin's sword approached Han Yunxi. Chapter 757. Qi Zonglin's sword was right in front of Han Yunxi when his wrist was suddenly hit by a stone that appeared out of nowhere. His hand hurt, and his sword was deflected. Han Yunxi dodged in a hurry. She supported Su Donglin and backed away from Qi Zonglin. "Who's there?" Qi Zonglin demanded loudly. Unfortunately, he did not see anyone except for the assassins of Liberty City around him. Qi Zonglin's wrist hurt. He looked at it, only to discover that the stone that had just flown over was actually a seed that had sprouted in his flesh. Well, Qi Zonglin had never seen such a thing before, but he was not someone to be trifled with. He immediately drew out his dagger and stabbed it into his flesh, gouging out the seed along with its roots. The roots that he had gouged out were not short. Fortunately, he had acted fast enough. Otherwise, his hand that was holding the sword would have been seriously injured. Whoever the seed was, it did not come with good intentions. He had to capture Han Yunxi first. However, when Qi Zonglin walked toward Han Yunxi, a lazy and slightly mocking voice came from outside the crowd. "Even I don't dare to bully this woman. Qi Zonglin, are you blind?" The voice was not low, but it was impossible to tell where it came from. The surrounding assassins were all looking for the source, but they could not find anyone. Han Yunxi stopped abruptly. She looked around in disbelief, but she could not see anyone either. However, she knew who the newcomer was. This mocking voice was all too familiar. "Who are you exactly? What kind of hero are you to ambush the mayor? Come out," Qi Zonglin said coldly. He did not forget to rush toward Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi did not retreat. She glanced at Qi Zonglin's wrist and warned with a sneer, "Qi Zonglin, if you take one more step forward, do you believe that someone will feed the only antidote to the dogs?" Qi Zonglin was greatly shocked. He hurriedly looked at his wrist, only to discover that the wound on his wrist had turned black. It was a sign of poisoning. "Han Yunxi, where's the antidote?" Just as he was about to reach out to grab Han Yunxi, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his hand. It was as if he was being burned by a raging fire. The pain was so intense that he couldn't exert any strength. Han Yunxi continued to retreat. This poison is called flame poison. It starts from the wound and slowly spreads to the whole body. City Lord Qi will soon know what it feels like to be burned by fire. Qi Zonglin was not easily intimidated. He immediately ordered, "Men, catch this bitch." Only by capturing Han Yunxi would he have the capital to negotiate with the poisoner. Otherwise, his poison would be incurable. Several elders immediately rushed over. At this moment, a thorny vine suddenly shot out from under Han Yunxi's feet. It madly grew countless branches, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the air. The thorny vines had grown out of the seed Qi Zonglin had dug out just then. They protected Han Yunxi in the center while their countless branches danced in the air, frightening everyone who saw them. No one dared to draw near. So beautiful. Han Yunxi looked at the dancing thorny vines. It was the first time she realized that thorny vines were such elegant and beautiful plants. It was also the first time she realized that these plants that blocked the way could also be used to protect people. Qi Zonglin's hand was hurting more and more. He pressed down with his other hand and said coldly, "Chop it off." "Qi Zonglin, it looks like you don't want the antidote anymore." That person chuckled. Although they couldn't see him, they could imagine his fragrant breath. He laughed and said, "It's fine if you don't want it. Anyway, you can still chop off that hand." This time, everyone could tell where the voice was coming from. Everyone looked towards the south at almost the same time, and the killers who were surrounding the south retreated immediately. They saw a red figure fly over and land in front of the dancing thorny vines. It was a man in red. That red robe was as red as fire. It had wide sleeves and was luxurious and beautiful as it spread out on the ground. Just his back was so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of cities and take people's souls. Amidst everyone's shock, he looked back and smiled at Han Yunshi. In an instant, the dim world seemed to brighten up. Even the thorny vines bloomed into enchanting red flowers. It was him, Gu. Xiaoqi, long time no see, Han Yunshi muttered to herself. Who are you? Qi Zonglin asked coldly. In an instant, all the killers surrounded him. He's Gu. He was originally the owner of the Heavenly Fragrance Tea Shop. I don't know when he became Long Fei Ye's lackey. Qi Yaodian sneered. So what if Gu Qixiao came? Could he defeat all of Carefree City by himself? This person is proficient in unorthodox methods. His poison techniques are also very powerful. Everyone be careful. Qi Yaodian reminded again. Gu, hand over the antidote, and this city lord will let you live. Otherwise, this city lord will definitely cripple your arms and legs in exchange for this city lord's hand. Qi Zonglin warned domineeringly. Unexpectedly, Gu ignored him. Instead, he frowned and looked at Qi Yaodian. What did you just say? This young lord said that you are Long Fei Ye's lackey. Qi Yaodian did not back down. Gu's flirtatious eyes immediately narrowed into a straight line. His voice became arrogant. Qi Yaodian, do you know when this young master arrived? Not to mention Qi Yaodian. Everyone present was baffled. What did this question mean? I don't care when you arrived. If you know what's good for you, hand over the antidote quickly. Your tricks can fool others, but not my Carefree City. Qi Yaodian was very disdainful. Gu ignored him and said coldly, this young master arrived before you killed all of Long Fei Ye's shadow guards. What did this mean? Do you know why this young master waited until now to take action? Gu asked again. For some reason, Qi Yaodian felt his hair stand on end. However, he quickly ignored it and said with a contemptuous smile, are you trying to show off your might? A hero saving a beauty? You are overestimating yourself. You are courting death. Gu played with his beautifully manicured fingernails and continued, because this young master hates Long Fei Yi. If I don't seize this opportunity to suppress his arrogance, this young master will feel uncomfortable all over. Even Han Yunshi was baffled. What was Gu doing? He had arrived a long time ago, yet he had waited until now. He was alone. How was he going to deal with an entire city of experts? Last time, he had been wounded to such an extent when he responded to the archers of the Chu family. This time, he was facing the entire Carefree City. Han Yunshi almost wanted to run over and knock Gu's head and tell him, dear, stop being so pretentious. Then tell me, how are you going to suppress Long Fei Ye's arrogance? Why? Are you going to fight 10 people alone? Qi Zonglin sneered. Why don't you have a fight with me? If you win, Carefree City will retreat. If you lose, hand over the antidote, and I'll take Han Yunshi away. How does that sound? Gu Qixiao arched a brow at him, his eyes as charming as silk. Forget about women. Even men would fall for his charms. Qi Zonglin found the sight of his face rather pleasing to the eye. But Gu Qixiao's demeanor suddenly changed. He spat crudely, his spittle landing on Qi Zonglin's face. Your grandfather. Do you think I'm an idiot? 1 against 10? Won't I be beaten to a pulp? Let me tell you, not just 1 against 10. I can't even fight you one-on-one. I brought my men here today, too. I'm going to fight 100 against 10. Aside from Han Yunshi, everyone else was given a fright by Gu Qixiao's sudden change. But what truly frightened them was what happened next. Come out, all of you. Hardly had Gu's voice faded away when groups of people whose faces were as pale as corpses walked out of the woods in all directions. They were all as expressionless as warriors of sacrifice. Although they did not carry any weapons, and there was no telling whether or not they knew any martial arts, the air of death and decay that they emitted was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. They were so numerous that they had surrounded all the people of Carefree City. The people of Carefree City seemed calm, but they were actually panicking. Qi Zonglin's face was awful too. He mumbled to himself, warriors of sacrifice. Gu tidied up his somewhat messy hair and answered casually, No, they're just poisoned corpses. As soon as he finished speaking, Qi Zonglin almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The faces of the assassins around him all turned pale. They were actually poisoned corpses. No wonder they looked even more sinister and terrifying than warriors of sacrifice. The poison men that Jun Ixie raised were already very frightening, and he had raised no more than 10 poisoned corpses. Who would have thought that Gu would raise such a large group of poisoned corpses? Even if Carefree City could deal with the warriors of sacrifice, they could not deal with so many poisoned corpses. Not only were poisoned corpses immune to many poisons, they could also poison invisibly. Qi Zonglin was drenched in cold sweat. He even forgot the burning sensation on his hands. Gu Waiyu, how about it? My men are stronger than Long Fei Ye's shadow guard, aren't they? Gu asked very seriously and solemnly. Qi Zonglin, when my poisoned corpses annihilate your entire city, do you think Long Fei Yi will submit to me? How should Qi Zonglin answer? He only felt that the devastatingly beautiful man in front of him was a lunatic. He had no time to care about Han Yunxi, much less the antidote. He shouted, "Somebody retreat!" He jumped into the sky first and flew away with his lightness skill. Almost no one from Carefree City dared to stay. They all flipped in the air and escaped through the encirclement of the poisoned corpses. Gu did not order the poisoned corpses to chase after them. It could be said that he intentionally let them go. The news that Carefree City had turned out in full force would definitely spread out very soon. He could not really let the poisoned corpses annihilate Carefree City and let Han Yunxi, the remnant of the poison sect, bear the infamy. Poisoned corpses were only bestowed with poisonous insects and were feared by everyone in the world. Qi Zonglin had been poisoned. If he could not cure himself in time, he could only chop off his hands. It was more or less venting for Poison Girl. Looking at the corpses of the Shadow Guard all over the ground, he did not really care. He was only depressed that he had come one step too late and frightened Poison Girl. Step by step, he walked towards Han Yunxi. As he drew closer, the vines slowly withered until they all fell to the ground. He stood right in front of Han Yunxi with a smile that could topple cities and overturn nations, his charms filling the air. Poison Girl, it's been a long time since we last met. Did you miss Chi brother? Han Yunxi was so excited that she did not know what to say. She just looked at him and looked. Is Chi brother really that good-looking? Gu asked with a chuckle. This was the first time Han Yunxi had looked at his face and his smile so seriously. Although she had always known that he was very good-looking, she did not know that he was this beautiful. Gu's devastatingly beautiful and otherworldly beauty had only lasted for a moment. In front of Han Yunxi, he was just an ordinary man in the mortal world. He was not cold, not beautiful, and not enchanting. He was just like an ordinary man who loved his sweetheart and cared about the most ordinary things, such as food, oil, salt, soy sauce, and tea. He hurriedly took out a water bottle from his sleeve and handed it to Han Yunxi. You must be thirsty. Drink quickly. It's warm and neither too hot nor too cold. Don't drink too much. I even brought you some food. He rushed to the carriage in the forest and brought back a 3-tiered food box. When he opened it, it was filled with piping hot food. He said, Poison Girl, after such a long journey, you must have not eaten hot food for several days, right? Drink some soup to warm your stomach first. As soon as he learned of Han Yunxi's whereabouts this morning, he had personally prepared food and brought it over. Chapter 758. Han Yunxi indeed hadn't eaten hot food for several days. If she could, she would try her best not to, because Gu Beiwei was waiting for her to save him. The longer the corpse ginseng's poison stayed in Gu Beiwei's leg, the more dangerous and difficult it was to remove. At this moment, looking at the steaming hot food, Han Yunxi didn't know if it was because of the heat, but her vision was a little blurry. Unlike Long Fei Ye's simple food, Gu was a very typical foodie. Even the takeout food was carefully selected and meticulously cooked. It could be said that it was full of color, aroma, and taste. He personally scooped a bowl of soup and handed it to Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi looked at the kettle and then looked at the hot soup. She asked confusedly, "What do I drink first?" "Drink a mouthful of water to moisten your throat, then drink the soup." Gu was very serious, and his voice was so gentle that he didn't realize it himself. Han Yunxi was really not used to his seriousness. It made her very uncomfortable in front of him, and she couldn't relax. She sniffled, and her vision suddenly became much clearer. Her heart also seemed to calm down a lot. "We're in a hurry. Why are you so particular?" She took the hot soup and drank it in big mouthfuls. This was the first time Han Yunxi accepted Gu's kindness. A bowl of hot soup in the wilderness was a bowl of very common ribs and corn, but the taste was delicious and delicious that Han Yunxi would never forget in her life. Gu saw that Han Yunxi drank it and was in a very good mood. He hurriedly scooped rice for her. Not to mention a meal. As long as she accepted, he would help her fish and pluck the moon in the water and the stars in the sky. Just as he was about to hand the rice to Han Yunxi, she didn't notice and nimbly helped the heavily injured Su Donglin into the carriage. She asked, "Old ghost, can you help him treat his injuries?" Gu glanced at him and said disdainfully, "Useless thing. I don't need his help." Su Donglin suddenly roared, "I'd rather die than need his help." Han Yunxi certainly understood Su Donglin's anger. Su Donglin had clearly heard what Gu had just said to Qi Zonglin. Han Yunxi knew that Gu's mouth was vicious, but his heart wasn't that vicious. He must have just arrived. Otherwise, he wouldn't have waited until the Shadow Guard was completely annihilated before showing himself. Gu didn't even bother to look at Su Donglin's anger. In fact, Han Yunxi didn't fully understand Gu. He was a very decisive and extreme person. If he liked something, he would do whatever it took to get it. If he didn't like something, he wouldn't care about that person's life or death. Similarly, he would never change. He was a good person, but at the same time, he was also a truly heartless person. He did arrive after the Shadow Guard was completely annihilated. However, if he had arrived earlier, he would have only helped Han Yunxi for the sake of Han Yunxi. He wouldn't have saved the Shadow Guard. Idiot! How can you believe what he said to deceive Qi Zonglin? If we didn't need his help, you and I would have been dead long ago. Han Yunxi glared at Su Donglin. Su Donglin finally wilted and didn't say anything. Gu actually didn't argue with Su Donglin. After treating Su Donglin's injuries, he placed a bowl of hot rice in front of Han Yunxi. "Poison girl, eat while it's hot. Hurry." Although it was difficult to refuse Gu's kindness, how could Han Yunxi still be in the mood to eat? She looked at the ground full of corpses and the circle of terrifying poison corpses that didn't move. Her heart was like a stone that fell into a deep lake and kept sinking, as if it would never reach the bottom. After a long while, she finally turned to look at Gu. "Old ghost, help me bury them all?" Gu didn't say much. He knew that Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to eat. So he casually threw away the bowl of fragrant white rice and rolled up his sleeves to get to work. Using his sword as a shovel, he dug a large hole and buried the 50 or so Shadow Guard corpses. All of the swords also went into eternal rest with them. There was no time to grieve. Gu dispersed the poison corpses, and they quickly continued on their way. Gu acted as the coachman. They left the small road and openly took the main road. He had personally come to pick up Han Yunxi. That meant he wasn't afraid of anyone, including Medical City. "When did you raise so many poison corpses?" Han Yunxi finally asked. From what she knew, it wasn't easy to raise a poison corpse. "I've been raising them in Medicine Ghost Valley. This time, I specially brought them out for the world to see." Gu smiled cold. "You're harming esteemed Wang Fei again," Su Donglin bluntly rebuked. Esteemed Wang Fei's identity as a remnant of the poison sect had already been widely spread, and the medical academy had been doing all sorts of things. With Gu's ruckus, esteemed Wang Fei's crime would be confirmed. Weren't poison corpses and poison Gu what everyone feared? What's there to be afraid of? This young master was the one who raised these poison corpses. I'll take care of them. Gu was very relaxed. What are you trying to do? There's no need for you to take the blame for me, Han Yunxi said unhappily. She was very clear in her heart that Gu was doing this to divert everyone's attention to himself. He even wanted to take the blame for her identity as a remnant of the poison sect. After all, he was once the foster son of the Medical Academy's head elder. If news of this spread, the Medical Academy would never forgive him. Han Yunxi didn't want to hide her identity forever and be a coward, but she also didn't want to be labeled as a remnant of the poison sect. This matter couldn't be rushed or impulsive. Their current forbearance wasn't cowardice, but a chance to reveal the truth and clear their names. With Han Yunxi's current understanding of the Medical Academy, she didn't believe that those old men were anything good. Gu looked back and chuckled. Poison lass, if Chi brother wanted to take the blame for you, he would have had the poison corpses exterminate everyone in Carefree City long ago. Chi brother only wants to warn a certain someone. Just wait and see. You're provoking the Medical Academy. Han Yunxi understood. No, you're Chi brother. I'm warning Gu Yintian. Gu's clear eyes glittered with ruthlessness and the pleasure of revenge. The army of poison corpses in his hands had always been hidden in the Medicine Ghost Valley and had never been brought out. He had carefully raised them in preparation for the day when he would deal with Medical City. Although the time wasn't right yet, if the people of Medical City dared to touch Poison Lass in the slightest, he wouldn't mind a mutual destruction. Presumably, the news would spread out in Carefree City very soon, and Gu Yintian would soon understand what he meant. As for why he didn't poison the people of Carefree City, it was purely because he didn't want Han Yunxi to be cursed as cruel and discredit the poison sect. He couldn't bear to see the world cursing Poison Lass. He had to make Poison Lass acknowledge her ancestors in a glorious way. Han Yunxi was shocked. She vaguely felt that Gu, a genius from the Medical Academy, should know some secrets. You, she was about to ask when Gu suddenly turned around and looked at her. Poison Lass, do you trust Chi brother? Han Yunxi was both doubtful and perplexed, but she couldn't refuse Gu Qixiao's clear, pure eyes. For some reason, she nodded. I do. Greatly delighted, Gu burst into laughter. He waved his whip and galloped on the spacious road. When the carriage disappeared at the end of the road, a master and his disciple walked out from the roadside. Master, who is that Gu exactly? The disciple asked. Interesting. The master stroked his beard and chuckled. Let's go. There should be a good show to watch very soon. The disciple was obviously confused, but he didn't ask any questions. The master and disciple headed north. The more the junior brother thought about it, the more confused he became. The master and disciple clearly didn't want the eldest senior brother to hurt Han Yunxi. So why did they instigate the people of Carefree City to kill Han Yunxi? Did the master and disciple want Han Yunxi to live, or Han Yunxi to die? Or perhaps neither was the case. If neither was the case, then wouldn't it be better to die than to live? Carefree City did indeed spread the news quickly. They even slandered Han Yunxi, saying that the remnants of the poison sect were too powerful and that there would be endless trouble if they didn't get rid of her. When Long Fei Yi received the news, he didn't relax for an entire day. He knew what Gu wanted to do. In the end, he was worried about Han Yunxi. He wanted nothing more than to recover immediately so he could go down the mountain and chase after them. Unfortunately, he really couldn't go down the mountain. Gu, who is he? The old man in Kenzo was curious. Gu Qixia, Long Fei Yi replied indifferently. Realization dawned on the old man in Kenzo. So it's him. He's quite bold to provoke Medical City like this. Even to the old man in Kenzo, Long Fei Yi still didn't reveal Gu's undying body. A gentleman's word couldn't be taken back. He'd agreed to keep Gu's immortality a secret, and Gu had agreed to keep Mute Granny's secret. Long Fei Yi changed the subject. Master, how did you save Duan Muyao last time? Long Fei had only thought of the matter after 2 days of recuperation and free time. The old man in Kenzo still didn't look too good at the mention of Duan Muyao. The only way to truly let go was to forget Luo Qingling, right? He'd remembered her, for a lifetime. How could he forget her at his age? However, the old man in Kenzo was no longer deformed when facing this longing, but sober. Her dantian was heavily injured, causing her to lose all of her internal energy and unable to gather qi. As long as there's enough true qi, it can be nurtured and temporarily restored. All she needs to do is find a wondrous medicine to repair it. The old man in Kenzo replied without holding back. What medicine? Long Fei Yi asked hastily. The old man in Kenzo whispered 4 words in a Long Fei Ye's ear, causing Long Fei Ye's expression to shift. Got it. Then he told the old man in Kenzo how Gu Beiyue's true qi had rebounded. The old man in Kenzo was astonished. It looks like this person is incredible. Incredible. What do you mean? Long Fei Yi didn't understand. He's a once-in-100 years genius. His body must have been born from the jaws of death. Once he recovers from his injuries, his internal energy will increase exponentially. Neither you nor I will be able to deal with him, the old man in Kenzo said seriously. Fei, who is he? Long Fei Ye's eyes darkened. After a long time, he replied, a friend. He didn't elaborate, but asked, Master, is there any news about that wondrous medicine you mentioned? The old man in Kenzo had already sent people to search for it in order to save Duanmu Yao. There's still no news. The old man in Kenzo hesitated before speaking. Are you really going to save this person? Long Fei Ye's eyes were hooded, making it impossible to see his expression, but his tone was resolute. I have to. News had reached Celestial Mountain, so it naturally spread to other places as well. Western Zhou and Tian and still hadn't publicly declared their stance. Ning Cheng was currently fighting with Chu Tianyin on the battlefield, but he'd sent word to the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to hand over Han Yunxi. Otherwise, he'd wipe out the Chu clan troops and march south to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. As for the medical academy, Chapter 759. As soon as news of the poisoned corpses reached the medical academy, the Council of Elders was the first to explode. Head Elder Ling Gai and 4th Elder Mu Lianxin had long been banished from Medical City for inducing premature labor and lost their qualifications to practice medicine forever. Only 2nd Elder Li Shu Yuan, 3rd Elder Shun Jueming, and 4th Elder Li Tianxi remained. During this period of time, the 3 of them were looking for candidates among the several directors. They wanted to recommend 2 elders to fill the vacancies. When they received the news, they happened to summon Luo Zuishan for a chat. It had to be said that the news was too shocking. Even in front of Luo Zuishan, 2nd and 4th Elder couldn't control their emotions. Where did this guy come from? He can't be a descendant of the poison sect. Can he? He actually raised so many poisoned corpses. His motives are unfathomable, unfathomable. I heard that Han Yunxi has a close relationship with that Gu. Even if Gu isn't a member of the poison sect, he's definitely connected to them. 3rd Elder Shun was the calmest of the lot. He had a personal relationship with both Han Yunxi and Gu, but he didn't know what to say now that news had spread. He refused to believe that a woman like Han Yunxi was a descendant of the poison sect who would raise poisoned corpses to harm the world. Until he figured out the truth, he chose to remain silent. Luo Zuishan was also silent, but his chest and back were covered in sweat. Before long, his clothes were completely soaked. Those who didn't know better would think he was sweating from the heat. He wanted nothing more than to fly to South Ning right now, tie up Xiaoqi, and hide him. That stinking brat actually raised so many poisoned corpses? What is he planning? Does he think he can be so arrogant just because he can't die? Doesn't he know that once his secret is exposed, he'll suffer a fate 100 times worse than Han Yunxi's? Han Yunxi doesn't even like him, so what's he playing the hero for? Nonsense. Childish. Fool. Luo Zuishan cursed Gu in his heart, but in the end his eyes couldn't help but tear up. He muttered to himself, Xiaoqi, oh Xiaoqi, you've left medical school for so many years. Why did you have to come back? Have you forgotten all the hardships you've gone through in the past? Why can't you grow up? After Luo Zuishan left the Council of Elders, he was in an out-of-body state. He didn't know how he got back to his residence. He still kept the house where he had taken little Seven in, and it was untouched. He would never forget that child's body that was riddled with scars, his soul that was riddled with holes, and his eyes that were filled with despair but stubbornness. At that time, he knew that Xiaoqi would come back for revenge one day. From then on, he prayed every day, praying that Xiaoqi could truly grow up, forget his hatred, and become a human again. One had to know that people who lived in hatred were the most pitiful, especially those who lived their entire lives for revenge. They were even more pitiful. Since he had already left, wouldn't it be better to change his name and live on properly? At this moment, the head of the medical school, Academy head Gu Yuntian, was in the poison sect's forbidden grounds. His hands were clasped behind his back as he stood at the edge of a bottomless pit, looking up at the bright moon in the sky. He was dressed in elegant crescent-white robes, and his ink-black hair was pulled back. He looked casual, but he wasn't lazy. His age had added to his mature and steady aura. He was an immortal doctor, extraordinary and refined. Of course, this was all an illusion. Another person stood next to him, the one who had been expelled from the medical school, Head Elder Ling Gai. After being expelled from Medical City, Head Elder Ling had traveled through several cities like a rat on the street. After being beaten up a few times, he had secretly returned to the medical school. With Gu Yuntian's protection, it wasn't difficult for him to sneak in and out of the medical school. The moonlight shone down on the mountain, and the forest should be filled with the chirping of insects on a summer night. However, this was the poison sect, so not a sound could be heard. In contrast to the intense reactions of the Council of Elders and the Vice Academy heads, Gu Yuntian was strangely calm about the poison corpses. After a while, he sighed softly. Guqi Sha, Gu Yuntian, he interesting. In the end, Head Elder Ling wasn't as calm as Gu Yuntian. As soon as Gu Yuntian spoke, he couldn't help but say, Academy head, that brat definitely didn't lose his memories back then. He lied to us? Back then, Xiaoqi had been infected with the plague, and his pulse had stopped. The two of them had thought that he was dead. Gu Yuntian had been very sad, so he'd sat at Xiaoqi's feet and chatted with Head Elder Ling about the past. He'd also mentioned many things about the poison sect, including the poison nurturing arts. Even Jun Yixie of the 100 Poison sect couldn't nurture so many poison corpses. Xiaoqi must have eavesdropped on their conversation and learned the secret recipe for nurturing poison humans and poison corpses. Thus, it was very likely that Gu was the Xiaoqi from back then. After the medical school destroyed the poison sect, they took control of the poison nurturing arts and didn't destroy them. Instead, the academy head kept them safe and passed them down through the generations. Poison corpses and even poison goo were far superior to martial arts. In the end, the medical school couldn't bear to destroy such powerful weapons. Perhaps that girl called Han Yinshi taught him. It's not certain whether this goo is my Xiao Qi or not, Gu Yintian said indifferently. Gu Qi Sha suddenly turned over a new leaf and joined forces with Han Yinshi to set up Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Gu is also proficient in poison arts and often goes in and out of Pill Fiend Pharmacy. I think there's a good chance that this is the case. He clearly knows that the poison sect is at the heart of the storm, but he still brought out poison corpses. This is clearly a provocation. Head Elder Ling was afraid. His reputation was already in tatters. If anything happened to Gu Yuntian, no one would be able to protect him. Seeing that Gu Yuntian didn't respond, Head Elder Ling continued, Academy head, as I see it, that girl Han Yinshi probably doesn't know how to nurture poison. She's skilled in detoxification, but not in poisoning. Gu is Xiao Qi from back then. There's no mistaking it. He's raised so many poison corpses, so he must be back for revenge. Academy head, I think it's best to be cautious about this matter. If Xiao Qi really does know what happened back then and tells everyone, well, he'd just say that he knows. Even if he tells everyone, someone has to believe him. Gu Yintian wasn't afraid of this at all. Xiao Qi, it's been so many years since we last met. As his father, I've missed him a lot. Gu Yuntian's attention was completely on Han Yunxi. We'll know the truth once we capture that girl and ask her. Gu Yuntian laughed heartily. Back then, the medical academy had destroyed the poison sect, but unfortunately, they hadn't managed to wipe out all of their bloodlines. Gu Yuntian only knew about the remnants of the poison sect, but he didn't know how powerful they were or where they resided. His previous academy heads had spared no effort to secretly search for the remnants of the poison sect, but Gu Yuntian wasn't interested. It wasn't until he lost Xiao Qi as a living test subject that he began to take an interest in the poison sect's Gu poison arts, the human Gu. Although the poison sect had only proposed the idea of using humans as Gu for immortality without a specific method to nurture them, Gu Yuntian firmly believed that the poison sect's descendants were still researching this. Perhaps he hadn't missed a single clue over the years. Because of what happened with Long Tianma, he had set his sights on 100 Poison Sect, and Shi Yubao was still locked up in the dungeons. Unfortunately, neither of these clues had led him to any progress. Now that Han Yunxi's identity had been exposed, he was undoubtedly excited. Academy head, we should still be careful. Head Elder Ling wanted to persuade him again, but Gu Yintian changed the topic. Kenshin Li still hasn't given us a clear answer. It looks like Celestial Mountain has completely fallen into Long Fei Ye's hands. Head Elder Ling was familiar with Gu Yuntian's temper, so he had no choice but to give up. Long Fei Yi, that brat, is clearly challenging the medical academy. All the other countries are avoiding Han Yunxi like the plague, but he's still protecting her. Academy head, if this person takes over the world, he'll definitely threaten the prestige of our medical academy. Head Elder Ling was holding a grudge. Madame Lianxin had betrayed him, and all she wanted was to revive the Mu clan. The only people who could afford to pay her were Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, who controlled Medicine City. Ning Cheng is a pretty good choice. That brat knows how to adapt to circumstances, Gu Yintian said playfully. He'd been obsessed with medical experiments all his life and had never cared about the politics of the imperial court. He really didn't understand this field. Academy head, you mean? Head Elder Ling grew suspicious. 10 days later, the medical academy still hadn't received a reply from Celestial Mountain. However, Gu Yuntian personally issued an ultimatum to all doctors in Medicine City and the South Central regions. He demanded that Medicine City cut off all business with Pill Fiend Pharmacy or face the consequences. He also demanded that all doctors withdraw from the South Central regions or be disqualified from practicing medicine. Medicine City couldn't take the pressure anymore. Elder Wang of the Wang family wrote several letters to Long Fei Yi, and the South Central region's governor's manor sent an endless stream of urgent messages to Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Yi and Elder Kenzo hadn't expected Gu Yintian to be so ruthless. Their stalling plan hadn't even lasted a month. If it weren't for Elder Kenzo and the 3 venerated elders stopping him, Long Fei Yi would have left the mountain long ago. He couldn't bear to let Han Yunxi face this situation alone. Since he couldn't leave the mountain, he frequently communicated with Gu Beiwei to discuss countermeasures. 3 days later, Han Yunxi and Gu returned to South Ning Prefecture. Although she heard a lot of news along the way, Han Yunxi didn't immediately rush to the governor's manor. Instead, she went straight to the Duke of Qin's estate to find Gu Beiwei. However, as soon as she arrived, she saw a large group of officials from the governor's manor, as well as the heads of the 5 great clans of the South Central regions, blocking the entrance. Han Yunxi knew Medical City's movements like the back of her hand, so she naturally knew what these people were here for. Before she could get out of the carriage, a group of people suddenly rushed out from around her. There were both soldiers and guards, all of them surrounding the carriage. "You're courting death." Gu's expression was gloomy. He hadn't been in a good mood these past few days. Gu Yintian wasn't afraid of his threats. It seemed that he'd overestimated Gu Yuntian's intelligence and hadn't given him a clear warning. Han Yinshi stopped him from drawing his sword. She got out of the carriage and looked around. Cold, she said, "This princess is in a hurry to save someone, so I'll have to trouble everyone to make things easier for me. If there's anything else, please wait." Clan head Xiao, the head of the 5 great clans, laughed out loud. "Save someone? Han Yunshi, you're a remnant of the poison sect, aren't you? Don't even think about entering the Duke of Qin's estate today. Men, seize her and send her to Medical City." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.